Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman, and I am so glad you're here joining me today on this Saturday afternoon. I have a great show for you with ScioSophia. She is on her way, will be joining us shortly. So in the meantime, you get me. Yay. Anyway, so if you are new to the channel and you are not yet subscribed, she's asking me for the link. I thought I sent it. Bad me. Bad host. Hold on. Let me get it out there to her. I messed up. Anyway, but if you're new to the channel and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. Go ahead and hit that notification bell to be notified when I make new content as well. And like and share this broadcast. Sorry, it's a botched entry, isn't it? It's Saturday, so, it's a little more relaxed over here at The Reason We Learn. Anyway, I have asked Adrienne ScioSophia to come here and talk to us about a study that was recently discussed, I guess you would say, in I guess it's the Daily Mail. That's where they were talking about it. Yeah, the Daily Mail online. And we're going to show you the headline, and we're going to talk about how the media reports on research studies like this. And we're also going to talk about the study itself. And I've asked her to come and do it because she's an actual scientist. So while I can read a research paper decently enough, to kind of get the gist of it, she understands scientific methodology way better than I do and can help us understand, was this a good study? Was it not a good study? What did the study actually set out to study in the first place? Because that's not always accurately represented in the media either. So that's going to be really important. And what I hope you guys will pay particular attention to is not so much this specific study, although it's very interesting to see what they've done with this specific one, because it, seems to justify DEI hiring practices, or seems to suggest that, oh yeah, we should do it. But pay very close attention to the manipulation of language by the media about scientific research, because not a week goes by, right, where we don't see study says, study shows. And when it comes to education, you are going to hear the phrase research-based constantly. And you should have a heavy sense of skepticism when you hear that. And she will explain why. So here she is. Please join me in welcoming ScioSophia, Adrienne.
I'm back.
You're back. I'm so glad. I was like, first of all, it's, it's Saturday when I'm like totally botching the intro. Like, wait, there's stuff going on in the background. And there's you going, can I have the link? I thought I sent it. Anyway.
No, you did send it. You did send it. You did send it. I had to go back and scroll back in the chat and find it. I just forgot where it was.
Look at your shirt. I would like everyone to take note of the t-shirt. The most important thing you need to know about me is I'm not you. That's a t-shirt from The Reason We Learn.
Do you have a Mac?
I do, and it's doing this business.
Okay, I was going to say it did that just then.
I know, and you never can tell what it's going to do. Sometimes, like if I can't do it, it's like I'll do stuff with my hands, and like balloons will come.
If you do like the heart thing, it may do hearts. I don't know.
No, see, it's inconsistent. I could sit here all day and do this and not get a thumb. I could do this and get balloons or confetti, or I could do it 17 times and look like I have some kind of weird, Italian gesture Tourette's or something. Anyway. Okay.
Well, hello, folks online. It's good to be with you.
Yes. So
yes, I figured I'd wear the shirt and plug Deb's merch store at the same time. It's on the store.
It's my anti-cluster B t-shirt. It's one of the anti-cluster B. I have two anti-cluster B t-shirts. On this one, the most important thing you need to know about me is that I'm not you. is very important because when talking to people who are woke or whatever, whether it's in education or not, very often they will come at you as if you're supposed to think exactly the way they do. And how dare you not live in the reality they choose to live in? And they keep forgetting that you're a separate human being and you're entitled to think whatever the hell you want. And it is not your obligation to, satisfy their little fantasy world, whatever that entails. So, and that can be very different things depending upon the environment in which you find yourself. Okay.
That's on the store.wokescreen.com, right? Or is it?
Well, it's on it's wokescreen.com/ the reason we learn, and then the store.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
So you have to go to the store. It doesn't matter. It's there. And I appreciate every time you purchase a t-shirt or anything like that, you are supporting the work that I do. So thank you in advance. Also, please consider subscribing to the Reason We Learn at Woke Screen. You will get access to our private Discord. You will get access to a sort of private website that has curated stuff of just like all my content plus other resources that I put together for parents and dissident educators. And, you're also supporting my work. So it's very helpful. Thank you. So today we are covering, I'm just going to throw it up there on the screen because, hey, why not? And yeah, wait, hang on. Here it is. So this is the deal. This is the article from the Daily Mail. American Psychological Association claims merit-based hiring is unfair in new study.
See, Kieran and I did a SciChat Saturday a few months back, and we called it Studies Say Shit. And we called it that for just this reason, because that headline is completely false. It is absolutely and totally and utterly false. And so that's immediately one of the first things I wanted to say with this is like, please be aware that news reporters don't always report the accurate story of what an article says or what a study says. Because this is a prime example of, nope, that's not right. That is not what that study said at all.
It would be more accurate, would it not, to have the title be Daily Mail reporter says, study says.
Yes.
American Psychological Association claims. We'd have to go down 3 layers of claims. And by the time you get done with the headline, you'd be like, okay, I forgot the question. What was the claim? And when it comes to science, right? I remember from science class that you start with a hypothesis. So somewhere along the way, before the American Psychological Association could publish a study, they had to do the research, which began with at least one question or hypothesis, right?
Yes.
And then in the end, they'd come back and say, our hypothesis was this, and we found that. We were right, we were wrong. Here's what we found. Here's how we found it. And so when they do a headline like this, that obscures it all, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. And most folks won't read past the headline. And in fairness to whomever wrote the article, it's distinctly possible they didn't write the headline, right? That happens too. But even the article, doesn't quite get there, because this is the other thing is, this is not the American Psychological Association that claims this either. The author is even wrong about that. It's an article that's published by the American Psychological Association, one of their journals, yes, but it's written by somebody who's distinctly not the American Psychological Association. So,
right,
exactly. Matter, it's from the authors are from, Duke University and UNC Chapel Hill, actually.
I'm so shocked about that too. It's really shocking. So, I want to get into this so that we, get the audience dive right into it. Should we go through the article first and show what the article is telling the world the thing says? Because what would you say, 0.001% of people reading this article will ever dive in and read the study?
Not everybody will. This is the thing, is most people do stop at a news article like this. They don't actually go jump into the research article, which this is one where you can jump into it. So, if y'all want to follow along with us, go for it, because this is one of the few times where the research article itself is open source or open access. So there's nothing behind a paywall, which is lovely.
Right.
Anybody can go look at it.
Exactly. But I noticed when I was looking at this, just reading the article, the thing that they're saying, and then I think it's important to look at this, because when we look at the actual journal article, to see the difference, it's striking. It's really striking. So it's not just that they kind of sort of misrepresented, or they made it an incendiary headline that made people say, hey, let's go watch this. It's not even at all what it says. It's like completely wrong.
No, yeah.
The hint should have been that it was the American Psychological Association, not, something else, but we'll continue. So this says most employers hire individuals based on their qualifications, but a new study has claimed the process may be unfair.
Now, that is not what that study says. What the study actually says is that you can teach people that process may be unfair.
That's right.
Short version of saying it.
Well, exactly. And you know what? Is that's in the Journal of Experimental Psych. Is that the one there, or should we open to the abstract of the actual? Because I think you have the one with the abstract.
Yeah, I mean, I have the full article here and up in front of me in a browser window. But yeah, either however you want to do it. But yeah, well, here's the clue. I can read you just the title of the article, and you would know that first line in the news article is wrong.
Okay, let's read this again. So everybody have this in your minds, okay? Most employers hire individuals based on their qualifications, but a new study has claimed the process may be unfair. So study claims the process is unfair. And what's the other one?
The title of the actual journal article is, "Can selecting the most qualified candidate be unfair? ? Learning about socioeconomic advantages and disadvantages reduces the perceived fairness of meritocracy and increases support for socioeconomic diversity initiatives in organizations."
That's very different. Because this one jumps ahead to the study claims the process is unfair. And the other one says the study says people can be taught to perceive that the process is unfair. That's just a little bit different. Just like a little bit.
Exactly. And this is why you have to be so bloody careful with the news articles, and when they're saying study says this, I'm like, yeah, let's go actually look at it.
Well, the other thing that I found interesting is that, somebody would bother to do a study on this topic in the first place. Like, hey, guess what? We can give people information that might sway their perception of a process. And, by the way, that's also impacted by like what their original political views are and da, da, da. And I mean, if you told me the premise of this study, if you said, hey, we're going to do some research on this, I'd be like, yeah, I could tell you the answer to that right now. Like, what?
Well,
so I mean, you could maybe like kind of poison the well and like get, persuade people that something isn't so very good by shoving a lot of information in their face that it makes them feel sad for the applicants. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that does work.
Yeah, no, we do like to be nice to people. So if you can make people feel sad about something, I mean,
right. I mean, somebody got a grant to do this. That's anyway, but let's continue. Researchers conducted 5 experiments. Makes it sound so scientific, doesn't it? That there were 5, like not just one. The more experiments, that must be more accurate, where participants were given background information about the 2 types of candidates, revealing those who learned about merit-based hiring perceived it as less fair. Is that what they learned about, though? Did they learn about merit-based hiring, or did they learn more about candidates who were less qualified?
They were given some very idealized situations. And we'll go through this when we get to the actual journal article, but it was very idealized situations. And if you were reading it and reading them carefully, you could find that they were very flawed in terms of the information provided. And also it reveals some assumptions that the authors made about their kind of purview of how the world works.
No. This shocks me. The American Psychological Association has a worldview.
And well, to be fair, this is the authors, not the American Psychological Association. So I'm not going to.
I have Letterkenny in my head. To be fair. To be fair. Anyway, Continue. Sorry, I
No.
digress.
I like to be fair in that because I'm not going to tar, the whole organization, although the organization itself does have some serious problems. I'm sure a bunch of other psychologists could tell you. But yeah, no, that's not what it was. It wasn't learning about merit-based hiring. It was learning about, in this particular idealized situation, this person's had a perfect childhood and this person's had a really bad childhood. And don't you feel bad because this person with the not so good childhood didn't get the job or didn't get the promotion? And then one of the other experiments was just some general things, which was also very oversimplified. Some very general things about some people have it great, some people have it bad.
Again, this is a shocking revelation. I'm so glad we did research to find this out. But what stood out to me too is they say here, that revealing those who learned about merit-based hiring perceived it as less fair. At no point in time did either this article or the journal article, the research, define fair.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, okay, we're all operating like we have a standard definition of what fair would be.
See,
But
so
apparently we don't.
yeah, about the study itself, it's a survey study. So you're asking questions and you're providing background information. You have a control group who doesn't get the information. You have another group that does, and that's what you're comparing against each other. So in that sense, it was a good study because it was very clean in terms of the experimental setup of information versus non-information and what have you. But the problem is in the subjectivity of the information that was provided, in that it was not a very realistic real world situation. And there were lots of assumptions, and we'll get to this more in the article itself, but
Yeah, sure.
there were lots of assumptions made in that research article about, what constitutes making hiring somebody that works, um, or a promotion based on merit. What is the qualifications that someone would use? And I mean, the spoiler in that is those prompts, the prime qualification they used to define merit on the part of the employer was primarily high school grades and extracurricular activities in high school. Nothing else. They presumed that the employer in those made up scenarios would look at nothing else.
Which is just unrealistic.
Exactly.
I mean, you're not taking into account things like team dynamics, personality, age. And I know you're not supposed to judge age, but let's face it. And I've been on the receiving end of this. You get up in age, now it could work for you or against you, depending on the job. So I say, well, you've been on the job longer and you have more experience. We're gonna take that into account. You're calmer, more mature, whatever. Or conversely, I don't want my intellectual capital and training to walk out the door in retirement in a couple years. So there are all kinds of different factors that they're never going to tell you right up front. But they have to meet their hiring needs, right? They got to fill they have to fill the position. I'm sure I haven't been hired for jobs I was more qualified for than some other applicant because there were other things that mattered as much, let's say.
Exactly.
Right? And that's how the cookie crumbles, right?
Well, yeah. And there's also a heavy presumption that the candidates themselves don't go to make their own opportunities, or they don't get skills from other things or anything like that. There's heavy presumptions about that, which for what they were testing, in a way it makes sense because their hypothesis was if you give more information, folks will think merit is less fair, and this is how we can get people to support diversity initiatives more. That was actually the premise of the article, not
well, yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to point out, though. No, we need to make sure the audience understands that in that part that you read about how, can we kind of stack the deck? Basically, what they're asking was, can we stack the deck to persuade people to support diversity initiatives? And is this one way we could do it? Could we possibly show people that that not all candidates have equal opportunity in the literal sense? Again, if we define opportunity as having started in the same place, snapshot fallacy, but if we all started in the same place, same amount of access to extracurriculars, good schools, intact family, all the things, like that's equal opportunity, and anything shy of that is unequal opportunity. And if we tell people how many of the things they didn't have, will they support diversity initiatives?
Right.
To your point, that's the impetus. How can we get them to support a diversity? And the other thing is they've completely negated, like you said, they've completely negated the role of the individual to make their own opportunity.
Yep.
So somebody may have been born with less, let's say, than I had. Okay, let's say I was born into a situation where, like, financially, I didn't have needs. Okay, that kind of privilege, but didn't have intact family, didn't have all these other things. Somebody else could have been born much less well off in terms of money, but had this wonderful intact family supporting them and so forth. If you were only looking at whatever the criteria were that somebody else set up, you might say, I had more opportunity by that measure, but you may not be counting all the stuff that this other person did, or tried to do to improve their situation, or didn't do and failed. So, they're taking everything as like raw data. So one of the things I noticed reading it was, where's the responsibility on the applicant to do better or do well? And furthermore, they seem to be overlooking the ultimate measure, which is that if you didn't get good grades and you didn't do well in high school and you didn't do well in all these things, and that's where you landed, like there was no other point in time where you improved on that, why should someone hire you? Like, you can't do the job.
Yeah.
So
if you just can't do the job at all. I mean,
do you want to choose your brain surgeon by virtue of how bad you felt for them because they didn't have opportunities coming up, and that's why they almost failed their medical school classes? Like, aw, poor baby. It's not fair. They didn't have all the advantages, so that's why they got poor grades.
Is it really why they got poor grades, though?
We don't know. Maybe they're dumb. No, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I hate to say that, but we've forgotten that, there's such a thing as talent.
Mm-hmm.
There's such a thing as intelligence. There's such a thing as effort. All of these things that reside within the person. And this whole thing made it like human beings are mindless cogs, and some are given advantages and some are not. And in 30 years, we will be able to tell who had fairness and who did not. It's all a big experiment. I mean, it really feels like we're looking at people like they're lumps of clay, and we just kind of drop the lumps of clay in different environments and then sat back and said, let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what they think it is, but it's the chess pieces fallacy,
Yep.
Thomas Sowell with that one. Chess pieces fallacy. They think if they do this and this thing happens, this will be what happens. Nope. Nope. The world doesn't work like that.
Even in chess, there are how many different moves you could possibly make?
Oh, yeah.
So they're negating the skill of the player. So we did the 5 experiments. The study concluded that merit-based hiring fuels racial inequality. Okay, now what is important to know about that is they mean outcome.
Yeah,
that's all they mean. Like,
that's actually also not what the study said either.
So that's not what the study said.
The study specifically focused on socioeconomics. They made some passing remarks about race, but they actually didn't say anything about fueling racial inequality.
Right. And then it said members of marginalized, presumption, racial groups tend to experience socioeconomic disadvantages more often than members of privileged racial groups. Like, it's relevant to the whole thing about merit-based or, having the qualifications for the job. Even if that statement were true, like 100% true, in terms of socioeconomic experiences, whatever, that doesn't say anything. I'm pretty sure Thomas Sowell grew up with way, 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 way less than I had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
the man's easily the most brilliant thinker of our time. With I ran the numbers on it. Social Justice Fallacies was his 49th book.
Right. He could kick my ass any day. Like, I mean, there's no way I could live 17 lifetimes and would never come close to scratching the surface of his.
No, the man's brilliant at 93.
So,
it's a shame he's 93 years old, because I mean, that means we're probably going to lose the guy somewhere in the next couple of years. But
right. Oh, I love this. Manalula says, don't be silly, Deb. It's all white supremacy. You're right. I'm so silly. Pardon me. Anyway, okay, so that's what they said thus far. That's not even what the study said. Then we move on. Merit-based hiring is when an employer hires a candidate solely on their resume.
That is not true.
Achievements. Okay. A, it's not true, but B, what did the research say? That's not even what the research says.
No, that's not what this is the thing. Folks have to remind ourselves this is not just merit is not just your qualifications on your resume and other things like your transcript in high school or your SAT scores or things like that. No, it's what skills you demonstrate in other things too. And that's where, I mean, your resume can hint at that, but what about a cover letter?
Exactly.
I mean, cover letters often get you a lot more interesting stuff. And also your interview. In your
Exactly.
interview, you're going to be able to show things. And if you're in like something like my field, what is a regular requirement for interviews and for an interview process is a technical talk where you're actually demonstrating your communication skills and your ability and research all at the same time. If you're doing something like what I would be in or what social scientists would be in, anybody who does like an academic position, that's the standard part of the interview process. Really, is you're giving a technical talk and you're also interviewing with all the staff and all the other professors that you might be working with in a university environment and all this other kind of stuff. It's a heck of a lot more than
well
resume and achievements in high school.
Exactly. It's even to the point now where my husband was telling me that they're doing technical interviews for, software engineer positions, and they're leaning away from requiring the college degree, not because of fairness, but because they find that having that degree, that one credential, doesn't necessarily mean the person is technically, equipped
Is
or
savvy.
qualified.
Yeah.
Right. And there are different ways to go about that. So there are even ways to ascertain whether someone is qualified or not without the transcripts and resume, like the technical talk. So it's wrong. And that would still be a merit-based interview. It would still be a merit-based hiring process. So the idea that, they'll only look at the resume, that's just not true.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Go
before
ahead.
I forget to mention it, you may have a cat cameo at some point on my camera because one of them is sitting like right over here.
Okay. Well, we are a cat-friendly program. Safe for cats. People who suffer from socioeconomic disparities, including those who come from low-income areas, didn't have access to higher education and therefore weren't able to advance their career. Wow,
Do you love the blanket assumptions?
I'm reading this and I'm like, have y'all ever set foot outside of your little condo at like step away from your laptop and actually like interact with real humans? The number of assumptions in this, people who suffer from socioeconomic disparities, and therefore weren't able to answer that's it. I had socioeconomic disparities. I wasn't able to advance my career. I'm a prisoner of my.
I've seen a lot of great students, a lot of great scientists who came from really disadvantaged backgrounds. Socioeconomic, how the hell do I say it?
Yes.
Low socioeconomic status, or they're low income families or things like that. And they made a great life for themselves.
Yeah, it's, no one is going to sit here and lie and say, oh, it's just as easy, no problems. That's not what we're saying, okay? We are simply saying that these kind of sentences erase personal autonomy.
Yeah.
They're just lumps. They don't, Thomas Sowell, the chess piece, you're just a mindless chess piece moved around on a board by other forces and you have no agency. Lead researcher Daniela Goya Tochetto and her team conducted 5 experiments. And in the first 2 experiments, the groups read about merit-based hiring, but one group wasn't given additional information about the candidates. In the second group, researchers informed the participants about the candidate's socioeconomic disadvantages and the advantages of another candidate. So the other thing that happened is that the candidates who were given more info, tell me if I read this right, the candidates who were given more info drew conclusions from the information that were not grounded necessarily in reality. So they drew a cause and effect relationship between the extra info. And so if it said this person grew up without extracurriculars, this person grew up poor, this person didn't get to, take algebra in high school, whatever it said.
A good study will include the information about what was provided to the survey participants. And you can see this very clearly actually here, that this is why I was saying what they provided to the participants was really revealing about some of the worldviews in here and a lot of the assumptions they made about even like the paragraph that the section that we just read before about socioeconomic disparities and they don't have access and all this other kind of stuff, which is a really stupid assumption. And those kinds of assumptions were made obvious in there. And that's all the participants were given to work with. Now, what bothers me in this is that a lot of the participants didn't stop to think about it themselves. I'm like, well, what about this thing? What about this thing? What about this thing? That's all they were given. Um, and those kinds of things. So in terms of teaching and education and what have you, well, are we making sure that folks know that there's more to it than just your background, and your background doesn't define your life, you know?
Well, that's obviously on this channel in particular, the thing that I concern myself with is educating parents and teachers even about the negative ramifications of teaching kids these snapshot fallacies, like that where you start is where you're likely to end up in terms of privilege. And the SEL, the way SEL sort of removes agency and puts all of it in your intersectional position. So it's not choices that you make. There's no free will. It's, you're white or you're black or you're gay or you're indigenous or you're this or you're that. And those things aren't dispositive. They don't, but we're teaching kids that they are. Like, we are explicitly teaching them that they are. If you're born this, it means this. If you're born that, it means that. They have power and privilege that you do not. And when you teach people starting at age 6, this very fixed mindset. That's what's so ironic. They'll talk about growth mindset. And we have to have a growth mindset.
But it's very fixed. There's no nuance in reality.
You cannot possibly develop a true growth mindset. What Dweck was talking about, tomorrow can be better than today. And if I apply myself and I work harder and whatever, you can't develop that if somebody is busy simultaneously telling you, but it won't work because of your skin color. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And no one will respect it anyway. So why bother trying? Like, the mixed message that people are getting, then they come to a study like this, somebody hands them information about somebody's background. Is it really any wonder that they'd apply their worldview? Spoiler alert, at the end of this show, when we get done with talking about everything, I'm going to ask Adrian to retitle this, to retitle both the study and the study article and this article with what it should really say. So there's your homework assignment, Adrian, because I really think we should do these shows at like what it was, what it ought to have said, because if they were honest or accurate in describing what they learned, it would say something very, very different. All right, moving on. So let's see. In the second group, they inform participants about the candidate's socioeconomic disadvantage and the advantages of another candidate. Now they're comparing candidates.
Yep.
So they can get into the whole envy thing of like, I feel sorry for this one, but that one had an extra edge. This study included examples about 2 employees who were being considered for a job promotion. Both employees attended college, but one was high performing while the other struggled. This sentence makes no sense. Please help me. The other struggled to show he wasn't able to handle more responsibilities. Shouldn't it say was able? Struggled to show he was able to handle more responsibilities? Why would you struggle?
That's a heck of a typo.
Yeah, like, why would you be struggling to show that you're not capable?
Dude,
I have to work really hard
who was the Daily Mail person? Who was the editor who was supposed to oversee this? Because that is actually a typo. That is not what that's not what it says in the article either.
I'm going to be charitable and assume they meant that the other candidate was struggling to show that they could handle extra responsibilities. And as I read that, I'm like, if that is even remotely close to what the study found, my response would be, so what?
Yeah, so exactly.
What's your point? So they don't deserve the promotion is what they're saying. The other one struggled to show he was qualified for the promotion. What do you want me to do? Like, poor baby, would you like a binky? What would you like? I'm sorry. Do we give out consolation prizes? You tried for the promotion, but you suck, so you didn't get it.
You got it. Did you read the box? Well, we'll get to it, but the box for the promotion one, that particular study.
No, you're going to show us all this.
Oh my gosh,
you're going to love this. Appetite till you see the real study. This is just the article about the study. When you see the study, you're going to be like, what? Okay.
Cody has the name for it. Consolation promotion.
Yes. I am almost positive I have worked for bosses, in fact, that got consolation promotions. I'm actually certain that they did. Anyway, it says The study said the first employee's high performance rate was likely because of his wide-ranging extracurricular activities in college, while the second employee's poor performance was probably a consequence of having less work-related experience because he didn't do any internships or extracurricular activities before joining the company. And if you were led by the nose this way, and told that, it's probably because of this, and it's probably because of that. If somebody gave me that, I would say I'd still come to so what? Like, even if that's true, at the end of the day, this person is not qualified. I don't care what the root cause of his lack of qualification is to open my brain and take a look at my tumor. I don't want him doing it. Can we agree on that?
And they're also still assuming that it's because of that the employer is grading on like the internships and the extracurricular thing and all that
Nothing
too.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
So, or that the employer even knows about this stuff, because
exactly.
There are lots of ways we develop our skills and demonstrate our skills that don't show up on our resume.
Again, why cover letters are important, why the other stuff is important, the interviews and what have you, but they don't even talk about that with this.
No. In this example, participants were asked to gauge if it was fair, again, we don't know the definition, that the harder working candidate got the job, and if the employees had equal opportunity competition for the look at that sentence. Was it fair that the harder working employee got the job or got the promotion?
I think that was a goof on the part of the Daily Mail person. They should not have put that one there.
Let's ask the chat. Let's ask the chat.
Chat, tell us.
Chad, tell us, do you think it's fair that the harder working person gets the promotion? Or is that just terribly, terribly unfair? I just, Cody says he was just so capable. See the Whole Truth says, and when isn't there a situation where choice of the employer has been solidly without discrimination? Right. There are reasons they simply won't even put in a hiring offer. So that isn't going away unless you get rid of humans. Harder working means not as capable to do without hard work. Okay, I'm going to die now. My sides are going to hurt. Well, the other one, see the Whole Truth. The other one tried really, really, really hard to show that they weren't capable, but they were unsuccessful. Okay,
I do think there's a number, now that you've read it, that I didn't read the Daily Mail article as closely as the actual journal article. So I think there were some wonderful typos in there.
Oh God. Guys, we're
Kieran's
doomed.
Probably going crazy. I saw him in the chat.
We are so doomed. Anyway, so this is
wait. I love this. I leave them kids alone. I love that.
Yeah, okay. So Leave Them Kids Alone says, I'm struggling to read that article completely. I could say I'm not struggling to not read that article. Oh my God. Oh God. Okay.
We love it.
Thank you. All right. This study, so here we have a little graph, no information, inequality. I love they call it inequality information. Some of these candidates.
No, that is one of the figures from the paper, actually.
Yeah,
they just swiped
I understand. It's just, they called it inequality. It could be like, guy was a dumbass. Like, we don't know. Anyway. We're not all equally gifted with intelligence. I mean, I am not as smart as James Lindsay. That's just, I'm not ashamed to say
I would agree with that. Yeah. I don't
and I'm not insulted if somebody says that. That's fine. We're not all equally gifted. Okay. Socioeconomic disadvantages early in life can undermine educational achievement. They can. Okay. Test scores and work experiences. In this way, inequality can undermine equal opportunity, says Goya Chichetto, PhD, an assistant professor of organization and human resources at the University at Buffalo State University of New York. Are you guys scared of HR departments now? I'm very
actually scared. That's interesting. That author must have just moved recently, because their affiliation in the journal article itself is with the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University.
Oh, okay. That's a little bit of a step down, but I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Fancy schmancy wise, not necessarily literally. Yet when we evaluate the fairness of merit-based processes, people tend to ignore this broader context. If there ever were a phrase that I've grown to loathe, it would be broader context. It covers so many things, doesn't it? It's
See,
like,
but this is the thing. Their own article doesn't actually evaluate the fairness of the process. It's about whether or not you can teach people
that's right.
to think the process is unfair.
But that allows them to get away with all kinds of generalities in how they define what the process looks like.
Mhm.
They're not really interested in looking at whether the process itself is fair or not. They just want to know if they can convince people that it isn't. So it looks to me like while the research may have been clean in terms of how they set up the groups and the controls and all that,
Yeah.
the part that's missing for me in the cleanliness of it is they didn't put in really any good faith effort to have the process resemble reality.
Yeah.
So in other words, the process that they wanted
No.
to train people to see as unfair,
Mhm.
and that was a resounding success. The process that they wanted to is not even the process. To your point, like employers don't just look at a piece of paper and go, "Oh yeah, I'm hiring you."
Yeah, no, they
Let's
never
go.
do
You
never
got
do
high
that, and they never
scores.
do that in promotions either.
No, that's not how it works. There's a lot more that goes into it. There's a lot of subjectivity that goes into it and judgment and all kinds of things. And believe it or not, having worked in HR for a couple of years, way back in the way back, we did even then take into account if we had two candidates who were very, very close. Okay. So
Mhm.
that on paper, they weren't exactly equal, but they were close. And one of the candidates, the one that was like a little below the other one on the scores or grades or whatever it was. This was especially true, by the way, for internships and entry level positions. And if we then looked at the so-called broader context, we might, and I stress might, decide on the one who was coming up from farther below on the basis of grit, on
Yep.
the basis of the presumption, and we'd confirm this with an interview. In other words, we'd say, let's interview them both. We're
Yep.
not just going to go by the scores in the resume. This person has come pretty far. Let's interview them both and let's ask questions that get to personality, drive, commitment, work ethic, this kind of thing. And if we determined that that was an indicator that this person was like a Thomas Sowell, like this is a person like, I'm hungry. I may not have gotten the very best of grades, but I was busy working 3 jobs to support my family, that kind of thing. We would want to hire that person because that person had demonstrated a work ethic and so forth. And it had nothing to do with race and everything to do with their sort of demonstrated ability to juggle things and so on. And we would want that person. And conversely, if we found the opposite had been true, that they did as well as they did because people felt sorry for them along the way. And when we met them in person, they were, just looked like they had been sort of socially promoted, which also happens, by the way, then they would not get the job. So it was taken into account. We didn't make a blanket assumption. It was, we got to meet the person. Let's see how they present to see if these inequalities have turned to the good in their capabilities or have actually given them a leg up they didn't deserve.
Yep.
Which can be ascertained.
Yep.
You can tell. So
you can most definitely tell.
Yeah.
I guess a question for you, Deb, because I think the rest of the article after that is about is more about like this study comes as some Republican leaders are pushing back against DEI initiatives.
Right. So did you want to go to this?
Yeah, we can go to the article.
Okay, it's teeny tiny, so I have to make it big. I have to make it. These poor people are like, Deb, you don't mean for us to look at that, do you? All right, now.
No. We'll go to specific sections. Don't worry.
Can I do this? I was trying to make it so we didn't have to see those goofy thumbnails, but it looks like we're kind of all right. Do I not need to do that? I don't know. I guess it has to. It's fine. So there it is. There it is. As you can see, American Psychological Association Journal of Experimental Psychology General. All right. Guide us, scientist.
Oh, goodness. I gave up my sanity for Lent. I told you.
Was that really a sacrifice? No, I'm kidding. How much was left, really?
So this is something, and Karen and I and Woke Screen are talking about this. So this may be new stuff coming to Woke Screen soon. And one of the things I'm looking to do is actually to develop course material in how to read articles like this and things to
Yes.
go through. So if you're interested in that, be aware that that may show up.
I want to, before we start, I want to grab some of these comments.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Cody says inequality information gives you, however, many evil points. That's funny. And then See the Whole Truth says, I don't have perfect recall like my wife either. And then or the ability to live on 3 hours of sleep since a teen. And then this is something I want to address very specifically. Leave Them Kids Alone says, I was thinking about it again yesterday that actual logic concepts are no longer taught in 9th grade. Seriously hope there's a helpful online class for teens, if not A, and not B equals. Well, while we're talking about it, y'all may not know that I do teach private classes, or I can put together custom classes if you can get a group together, or even just one-on-one. I use this. I don't know if you can see it. I use the Art of Argument. This is the teacher's edition. Okay. Fantastic course. All right. This will teach your middle through high school kid everything they need to know to not get stuck in these kinds of things. But the Art of Argument is a fantastic course. I do teach it. If anybody wants to hire me to teach it to their kid or a group of kids, get yourself a little group together. You can do it on the weekends. I don't care. Fantastic resource. And it would give me lots of joy to help other kids learn to think. So anyway, it's a really good point. See the Whole Truth says, I like how they imagine someone's hiring. Oh, wait, where is it? I like how they imagine someone's hiring manager need things, things
for drones and cubicles.
Exactly. Critical thinking was something I had to teach as the management all the time, even to management later as a trainer. Yeah. And you know what? I've stopped calling it critical thinking, and I'll tell you why. Even when I started this work, I called it critical thinking until I realized how much Dewey leaned into that term to bring critical theory into things. So because critical has a meaning in terms of critical pedagogy, which is what we're fighting now. And it means like tearing down and deconstructing. So instead, I like to use the term active thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you prefer, thinking, just thinking. Okay. But because it's not actually thinking. When you are not using logic, you're not thinking, you're reacting. And there are just certain patterns of, habits of mind when you're reacting rather than thinking. So it appears like thinking, and that it comes out as logical fallacies. Active thinking, you are not doing that. You are putting things together. You're conceptualizing, you're integrating information, and it's a completely different process, but it is not critical necessarily. Maybe very, very constructive. So anyway, I just had to do that. So,
yeah. No, I mean, what I was going to say is that, and yes, I see what you said, leave them kids alone. I will be glad to pull together that course at some point in the near future. There's discussions and talks with Woke Screen regarding my locals community and other things. So we're going to get into that. There's things coming.
To the dark side. Coming to the dark side. All right.
But
so here we are.
One of the things I always do when I'm reading an article is an abstract is a great just summary of what's in the whole article. And oftentimes, if it's stuck behind a paywall, that's all you're going to get with it, is you'll get the abstract. We're fortunate that this is not behind a paywall, and more journals are doing what's called open access, where you can just get access to the whole article wherever you are. No paywalls. You don't have to be on a university campus to get it, because a lot of universities do have subscriptions to all of these journals. So if you're going through the Wi-Fi on a university campus, it makes it easy to actually get some of these things if it is behind a paywall. But this was not one of those. So like the whole abstract is up there already that you can see on the screen. But it's like, while the majority of Americans today endorse meritocracy as fair, we suggest that these perceptions can be shaped by whether or not people learn about the presence of socioeconomic advantages and disadvantages in others' lives. Across 5 studies, N equals 3,318, we find that people are able to attach socioeconomic inequalities in applicants' backgrounds to their evaluation of the fairness of specific merit-based selection processes and outcomes. Learning that one applicant grew up advantaged while the other grew up disadvantaged leads both liberals and conservatives to believe that otherwise identical merit-based procedures and outcomes are significantly less fair. Importantly, learning about the starting inequalities leads to greater support for policies that promote socioeconomic diversity in organizations.
This is the money quote right here at the bottom. Importantly, learning about starting inequalities.
Right.
As an educator, this tells me, and I hate that term educator, but as teacher, this tells me that the schools have been remarkably effective over the past however long, for instance, forever, at not only teaching people like how to not think, but to emote,
Yep.
to be receptive to this information, that there should have been a higher percentage of people in this survey, in this study, who said, yeah, it's irrelevant. It's just not relevant
Yep.
to whether the process was fair or not. It would have been a really good question, too, for the participants to say, I need more information on the rest of the process. What else are they considering besides the resume? Like, in other words, if they had stopped to think about any job they'd ever been hired for and said, that's not how it worked, this whole thing would have blown up.
Mhm.
So instead, they just took everything at face value. They were handed this information. It was like, oh, well, now that I know the person grew up poor, the process was unfair. Like, what? I don't see how that even follows logically at all.
No, and you're going to see that they actually put in a lot in their prompts for their survey participants. There were lots of those logical kinds of fallacies involved. So, you can get a lot in the introduction. Introductions are always supposed to be background material. What kinds of things are they concerned about? And their concern, quite obviously, from the start with this is that, well, we say that there's inequality has risen over the past several decades, and the public hasn't been demanding to reduce it. So that's why we're getting into this. And they talk about the theory called the fairness heuristic in there, which is basically the process is generally fair, right? It's the whole thing about merit. It's just phrased as the fairness heuristic in here. But there's one of the things you can look for in an introduction is what assumptions are they making that might not be founded. Or need more supporting information. Like, this is something I would look at as a reviewer. So it starts like right at the end where it says, but despite the fact, which is like right there, very last thing on the second, on the right column there, but despite the fact, and then it rolls over to the next page. But despite the fact that equal opportunity is a prerequisite for a true meritocracy, the near universal support for the merit principle suggests that most people may not give much weight to the ways that unequal advantages and disadvantages create unequal opportunities. One explanation in line with the fairness heuristic theory is that most people do not care much about unequal outcomes so long as the process is meritocratic. Now, it's not that thing that you've got highlighted that I'm looking at. It's the thing above it.
Oh, right up here.
Equal opportunity is a prerequisite for a true meritocracy. But is it?
What? Wait. Again, I come back to the
question to ask. Is that assumption correct? Because they give no citing information to support that. That is an assumption that they're making right there. Along with the following on thing that, the near universal support for the merit principle suggests that many people may not give much weight to the ways that unequal advantages and disadvantages create unequal opportunities. But the premise right there is that equal opportunity is a requirement for things to be meritocratic.
That, again, it just doesn't make any sense because I'm hiring for a position today to do brain surgery. Like, I need a brain surgeon to work at our hospital, whatever. And all the different people who decided to go to medical school to become brain surgeons didn't have equal opportunity. Okay. And water is wet. I have to keep saying this, but and yes. And then you say, okay, so take that into account when you're hiring. Well, I'm still going to hire the person who has demonstrated in their work and their reviews and everything that they've done in medicine, just in medicine, don't really care that they were a top high school athlete or that their mom loves them very much. It's irrelevant to me, as is it irrelevant that they grew up in a hovel. I don't care. If they are qualified to cut people open and fix their brains, and they're more qualified, I'm going to hire them. And if they're not, I'm not going to hire them, because as somebody points out, as World War Wit points out, Would it be fair to that person if that person died because an unqualified person was shoehorned in to be a surgeon?
Mhm.
And I certainly, if it were me or one of my children or my husband or somebody, I would be very frustrated. It would not be fair to us. It's not like they'd give us a choice and say, would you like the brain surgeon who was given a chance? Because, we were being nice. Or would you like the one who was, the most qualified brain surgeon? It's like, no contest. I want that guy. I don't really care how you've come up and,
Mhm.
whatever. That's just not, go choose your restaurant that way or something that's like low, you know,
Mhm.
low importance. But this
There's
really scares me, Adrian. This really scares me that they are defining equal opportunity as a prerequisite for true meritocracy.
no, and it absolutely is not. And let me add to it even more because there's a second assumption made that's the first sentence in that second paragraph. You see how they switch from opportunity to outcomes
Yes.
very quickly? They're presuming equal opportunity means you get to equal outcomes. If that rings a bell to people who've been following this for a
Ding,
while,
ding, ding. Critical race theory. Ding,
yes,
ding.
it's the disparity fallacy.
Yeah.
As Coleman Hughes puts it, it's the disparity fallacy. If it didn't have exactly equal representation, if there's a disparity anywhere, well, it's not fair. It's had to be some kind of systemic discrimination. It's not this, that, the next thing. Whereas we know from things like Thomas Sowell and Bernard Hommel and others like that, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of freaking things that affect a person's life.
Right.
So
Right.
saying you're going to have perfectly equal opportunity does not mean you're going to get perfectly equal outcomes between individuals, let alone when you scale it up in any way. Right? You're going to end up with well, if you have the lazy individual and the really hardworking individual, and they both have equal opportunities, and they both have the same socioeconomic conditions, and they both have this, and they both have that. No, they're not going to have the same outcome.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And I just this is just quite frightening to me because there are obviously people who really believe this,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
there's nothing else that could possibly have caused it, the unequal outcome. It was some external force of unfairness. And even so, even if it was, let's say we gave them their argument. Let's say all unequal outcomes were the result of some external thing, socioeconomic status, race, etc. Does it change the fact that person A can do brain surgery and person B cannot?
Nope, doesn't
It
change
doesn't
it.
change it. So, even if they were right and they're not, but even if they were, why would we want to do anything differently? Why would we want to lower the bar? That's
Hmm.
like self-harming to do that. If you're an employer, you're basically saying, I don't care if it harms my organization or my clients or my customers or my patients or whatever. The highest value that I'm going to support with my business or whatever we are, the highest value I'm going to support is equality. That is a little thing called communism.
Yep. Yep.
So, just so we're clear in our language.
But yeah, and but to continue on the point, this is what I look for in things like the introduction because it frames why they're asking the research question.
Yep.
And they have a distinct assumption that an unequal opportunities leads to unequal outcomes,
I
and
wonder
that's
where
not
they learned
necessarily true.
that. I wonder what K through 12 school they learned that in.
Mhm. And I mean, you and I have talked privately about you wanting to point out that the reason you should care about education is because of all these other different things and how is it directly relevant, what have you. This is directly relevant because this is about teaching adults. Really, is what this one's about. But
Yes, yes, it is. Everything, people ask me all the time, like, well, what does this have to do with education? Like, everything is education.
mhm,
Unfortunately, like the K-12 is just the beginning part, but then you have higher education, then you have graduate education, and then you have every job you've ever had and all the training you had to do, and every new thing you've ever had to learn. The newspaper is teaching you
mhm.
about what happened in the world. So the big question is, what are they teaching you exactly? What's the real lesson behind the
Yep,
lesson and so on? Everything is education. Even
absolutely.
entertainment. What is Disney teaching you about the world? No, I'm serious
No, no,
actually.
I know what you mean, but yeah. Um,
Okay, so what else should we be looking at here, as
So, I
far
mean,
as
the other thing to look for is, yeah, I mean, you look for odd assumptions. So we obviously found a couple of odd assumptions already that make
right.
no sense. Um, and then what you look for is, what are they going to do in this study? What is the purpose of the study? And so there's a section, yeah, you just got it right there, in our work. Um, and so that's what they're getting into. In our work, we propose that highlighting the presence of unequal socioeconomic backgrounds can shape fairness perceptions of meritocratic procedures. For instance, while most people believe that meritocratic rules represent the gold standard of fairness in organizations, we suggest that the very same meritocratic rules will be judged as less fair when previous socioeconomic advantages and disadvantages are highlighted. That is, we predict that making these inequalities salient will undermine perceptions of equal opportunity. As a result, decrease fairness perceptions of meritocratic processes and outcomes.
Well, this is an argument for keeping that info secret.
Yep.
For the applicants, so they don't go suing left and right for, discriminatory practices. I mean, no, it's actually kind of ridiculous. What they're basically saying is people can be swayed to believe that an employer is being unfair in their hiring practices if we tell them all kinds of little, potentially irrelevant details about the applicants.
Yep. Yep.
And why would you want to do that? What motivation would you possibly have? Oh, that's right. To gain support for DEI initiatives and DEI hiring practices.
Yep. But that's the next thing I look for is like, what is the purpose of the study? Okay. Let's see. And there's all sorts of great things like that. So the next section after that, where it's like overview of studies, is just, what are the 5 individual studies you're doing? This is one example of a type of social science study where they're actually grouping together results from multiple things, all under the same sort of, question. Can you teach people that that merit is unfair? Essentially, is what they're trying to do. And so that's where we can get into it. But the individual studies are then described in the individual results from the individual studies. And I think it's at the end of, it's before this. Yeah, it's in there. Wait, before the role of political ideology. Yeah, they actually preemptively state some of their conclusions. Crucially, we also observe that the perceived fairness of the very same meritocratic procedure and its outcomes are shaped by reminders of previous inequalities in the lives of the candidates, or even the lives of just people in general. And while participants updated their perceptions more when they learned about either disadvantages or advantages concomitantly, or just disadvantages, learning exclusively about advantages also led to perceptions that meritocracy is significantly less fair relative to a control condition. Thus, perceivers seem to consider unequal starting points when judging the fairness of procedures, as long as the inequality is made as salient as the procedure. These updated fairness perceptions translate into support for policies that promote greater social class diversity in organizations.
Wow. These people are very malleable. The people who participated in the study were very easily persuaded.
Well, and this is why I go back to the teaching, because there was logical fallacies in the information provided to the participants in that.
Yeah.
So
we should look at that. We should look at that so people can see. Let me take a look at some of the chat stuff too. Sure. This is a little scary. This is actually really, really scary. See, the whole truth says, oof, hiring in medicine is evil. Nursing is really nasty. You should see what happens when these must
hire X percents, I think.
Must hire X percents go into hospital. I thought it was kind of a play on the whole like X, anyway. Go to South Africa and find out what it means. You will get bubbles in your IV line. You're scaring the enemy. Okay, it's a mess down there. World War Wit says you can have equal qualifications, but the individual's temperaments could very well determine if they are successful. 100%. And that's kind of what one of the things we're saying is this completely ignores all the other factors that go into which candidate you're going to pick. And it's not just this, where they started and their outcomes. See the whole truth. And the best have full intention to leave where their quality is appropriately paid for. Yes, the best qualified people, when they start realizing that things work this way, will leave, and you have a brain drain. See, the whole truth is this is nonsense, doesn't work for one reason, money. When the banks decide to provide those reasons for funding people and don't make profit, guess what reality is then? And all of this is to hide those with money will get better results, and unless you transform that reality at the sources, lenders, et cetera. Yeah, so there's going to be a reality-based correction, but how many people will suffer? Like, how long will it take? How many bridges will fall down? How many planes fall out of the sky? But I mean, I'm obviously exaggerating. Planes aren't going to like just magically fall out of the sky suddenly because you hired somebody like this. But the case that I've made is that what this does is it creates a too fine sieve. So when you already have labor shortages in certain key areas of life, okay, aviation, for example, energy exploration, there, things that have sort of like either, ooh, I don't want to go do that, or I want to go do a job sitting at home on my laptop instead, or I want to be a gamer, whatever. You start filtering who's quality for these. You have 100 positions to fill. The number of people qualified might be 50. And now you're going to filter them by race and all this other stuff. You might narrow it down to 25. So you still have all these openings that you didn't fill because you're so busy trying to fill them with a very specific kind of person. And you will not find qualified people who fit those characteristics. So we end up still having labor shortages. And then that's when they start making exceptions to quality. So they don't do it on the front end. It's just, well, like, let's take this person because, they're qualified and they're Black. Let's take this person because they're qualified and they're a woman. Let's take that. And then when they run out of those people and the other people have given up, or more importantly, the message is sent down the food chain to the students, the kids. What career should I go into? And they start seeing what's happening and they get the message that, oh yeah, you're too white. They're not going to hire you. Oh yeah, you're a man. They don't want you, whatever. They just don't even apply. They don't even go into that field. They don't go to that trade school. They don't go to that university program. Whatever they don't do in the first place, they figure, what's the point? It's pointless. And now we just don't have qualified people at all.
Yep.
So this is what I say with the diversity hiring. It's not that they're just going to tell 100 qualified people who don't look the right way to go sit down. Is that they'll never exist in the first place. So that's kind of my thing. Let's see what Cody say. Yeah, but companies have been going woke and going broke for a while. Disney is bleeding money. The thing is, when they stop being woke, they don't get less broke. They get broker as their woke fan base leaves and the non-woke fan base stays away. Yes, it takes time. So Human is asking if I'm really racist or what. And of course not. Of course I'm not racist. The racist is the person who says that we should go out of our way to hire somebody based on race. And what I'm saying is we should hire people based on qualifications, irrespective of what they look like. It really shouldn't matter what somebody looks like. If the most qualified candidate is Black, then absolutely that's the person you should hire. Even if you have two candidates that are like almost, equally qualified. I just described what my HR process was when I was in it. I wasn't in charge. I'm just saying that the resumes we would pull candidates that were even like very close, but not exact, so that we would then interview them and see if there were other things that put them over the edge that are personal characteristics that are above and beyond grades. So it's not just grades and things like that. But no, the racist person is the one who lets race play a role in hiring, and they shouldn't. It shouldn't make any difference at all. And what I just explained is that the people who are saying, oh, I don't want to get on an airplane if I see a Black pilot, that's racist. That's not how DEI works. DEI doesn't say we're going to hire an unqualified Black pilot. It says we're going to hire a pilot, and if we can find one who's Black, they're going to get hired quicker. And when that message, that DEI hiring practice message gets out to people thinking about becoming pilots, they decide I probably won't get hired because I'm not Black, so I'm not going to become a pilot. So it narrows the number of applicants that you have that are qualified in the first place and causes labor shortages. And then that results in the hiring of less qualified people of all races because you're running out of people. So hiring based on race is harmful to everyone, literally everyone. And then the tragedy is when you get on the plane and you see a Black pilot, if people start to think that maybe the pilot was hired for the wrong reasons, and then that is racist. Yep. See how it works?
Exactly.
It creates racist thoughts. So DEI is a problem. I'm not
And on the
criticizing
side
it
note, there's
because I'm
actually a
racist.
lot of literature that shows that with DEI trainings. I sent you a link before.
Yeah, we'll look at that too when we're done. There is an article that explains that the DEI research concludes actually that the diversity training is divisive, counterproductive, and unnecessary. It's just not how business works.
It actually tends to reinforce stereotypes and create new stereotypes based upon
That's
race.
right.
It actually does completely the opposite of what it claims.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, I didn't mean to to like interrupt that, but I want to be very clear to make sure there's no misunderstanding that we are not sitting here and saying that that anything that says white people are being discriminated against. It's not what we're saying. We're saying that when you tell people that that things about them matter more than their qualifications, and they decide that's what makes fairness, that's where you run into trouble. Because that's not what makes fairness. Okay, so moving on, what should we look at next?
So,
this struck me as interesting, the role of that it was conservatives as well as liberals. It wasn't just people on the left that were easily persuaded to take into account somebody's background.
You'll see it's to a lesser degree. It's to a lesser degree than
I would imagine it would be to a lesser degree. I just would have thought the lesser degree would be bigger.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I know. Let's see. So
I want to see the questions or the scenarios. Which one did you like?
The boxes there, box 1 and box 2, they're both on the same page, are the scenarios they were presenting in the first, particularly in the first study, which was just about the hiring decision. So they did two things here. You had the first study and the second study. The first study was about hiring decisions. The second study was about promotions related thing. And then you get into the third and fourth and fifth ones that are more so about, maybe we vary it and give it the information this way or information that way. And the fourth one is about a bit more about fourth and fifth one are a bit more about the support for policies than anything else. So that's where it gets into.
Well, let's read through box number 1, meritocratic hiring process and outcome.
Yes. So this is what was given to folks in that first study, particularly. This was the no information case. So no information about background inequities or anything like that. That is what that one was particularly given to the participants in the survey. So it says, this is the prompt they were given. Jim and Tom have both worked hard and graduated college. They have now applied for the same 2 jobs, one high paying and one low paying. Members of the hiring committee for the high paying job are focused on only getting the most qualified candidate to work for their company. They're going to hire the candidate who has shown higher performance over time. Based on this preference for performance, Jim is the clear choice. Jim has better grades and a lot of extracurricular activities and internships. Tom, on the other hand, has not done any internships during college and his grades are lower than Jim's grades. So they offer Jim the high paying job. Both Jim and Tom get the offer for the low-paying job, but only Tom accepts it given that he was not able to get the better offer.
This is a very weird scenario. They say that they're working at the higher paying job and getting the most qualified candidate. They're going to hire the candidate who has shown higher performance over time. Based on the preference for performance, Jim is a bit Thomas had not done so they offered Jim the high paying job. Both Jim and Tom get the offer for the low paying job. Why? I thought they were going to offer Jim the high paying job.
Like, but it is a weird scenario to begin with, for sure. And you notice the focus is only on grades and extracurricular activities,
which even right out of college, that was nobody looked at my grades. Like literally nobody.
You had no mention about the interview process.
There's no mention of the interview process, and unless something has changed dramatically from 1987 to now, entry-level jobs don't ask for your transcript.
No, generally speaking,
unless you're going for an academic job, where they want to see how you performed academically in the same environment or the same subject matter area, because then it's relevant. But if you're applying for a job like that job in HR, for example, where my background is in education, so my master's in education, they didn't really care what my graduate transcript showed for how well I can teach science or math or whatever to third graders. Like they didn't care. what my grade was in that class to go do HR. What they were more interested in was my resume in terms of prior jobs that I'd had that dealt with administrative
Yep.
tasks, people tasks, interview tasks, etc.
Mhm. And it's gonna depend. If you're doing, like, an entry-level job at McDonald's or something like that, about they're not gonna care about your grades, they're not gonna care about your extracurricular activities, and admittedly, most college graduates are not looking to work at McDonald's anyway, so that's a poor example.
It,
I have to put
it,
that one on
it
the back
really
burner,
is
but
a very strange scenario. Okay,
mhm.
so
Box 2 is the information case, and this is where it gets interesting.
okay,
Here's the case. Jim has always been a very hardworking kid. Jim grew up in a family that always had a lot of money to buy him what he needed to make sure he always attended the best schools. His parents always made sure to spend time with him while he was growing up. When it came time for college, Jim was able to go to the best universities and did not have to worry about working to pay for his degree. So he had time to study and participate in unpaid extracurricular activities that he knew were important for getting a job when he graduated. Tom has always been a hardworking kid too, just like Jim, but Tom grew up in a family that did not have nearly enough money to buy him what he needed and to make sure he attended the best schools. His parents never had time to spend playing with him while he was growing up. When it came time for college, Tom was not able to go to the best universities and had to worry about working to pay for his degree. So he had to split his time between studying and working to make ends meet and could not afford to participate in unpaid extracurricular activities that he knew were important for getting a job when he graduated.
right. So here's the thing about this that is kind of frustrating to me. I mean, it's your standard boilerplate scenario. Um, so many blanket assumptions,
Exactly.
and that's it's really frustrating when I read these scenarios and they're talking to people about whether someone's qualified for a job or this impacted their ability to be qualified. There are so many people who grow up in families like Jim's who have the opposite happen. They feel like they don't have to work, they're spoiled, they don't need to do anything, they lay around, they don't do well in school. In other words, Jim has just had every bit of his own hard work erased in the
Exactly.
minds of the participants. Jim has been a hardworking kid, except we're not going to consider that right now as being really relevant because he had all these other benefits going on in his life. And then Tom, also a very hardworking kid. We're going to value that. We're going to say like that was so much more valuable because he didn't have all of these things. And then, as I said before, the only time you might be able to ascertain whether that information is relevant at all is if they're otherwise almost the same. You have to choose between two people and you interview them and you
Yep.
ask them questions about the relative merits of their work and so forth and so on. But the way this scenario describes it is as if Tom's performance is quite a bit less outstanding than Jim's, and that we should write that all off. We should attribute 100% of it to how he had to work his way through school. And Jim's performance, we should say, is 100% attributable to things that were beyond his control.
Mm.
That reflects a bias, a very powerful bias, I might add, against Jim.
Yep. Yep. But that's the one of the two things that were presented just for that first study. And if you scroll back up a little bit on the page, what
Yeah.
they're looking at, and this is where we get into methods. Some people don't think methods is important, but methods are important because the methods, if they're done right, can support the conclusion. But if the methods are done wrong, then the authors are making conclusions based on all sorts of faulty crap. But what they were measuring in response to that, was all these survey things about fair hiring outcomes, equal opportunity and political orientation, or just a little bit up further. But those
Oh, it's
kinds of
up there.
things are important. So they were asking each of those folks after reading those blocks of text. One group of folks got the no information, the other one got the information related things. And so then they asked them this question about fair hiring, right? We are now going to ask you a couple of questions about the hiring process for the high paying job. Think about the hiring process and how fair you think it was, and click to answer the next questions. This was an online survey. We then measured the perceived fairness of the hiring process using 3 items. The hiring process was fair, the rules used by the hiring committee were fair, and the process used by a hiring committee to select a candidate was fair. And it ranged from 1 to 6. Disagree to strongly disagree to strongly agree.
I'm just baffled because none of the information provided tells me anything about the procedure.
Exactly.
Or the process.
Exactly. So, and if you think about the framing in the Daily Mail article, it was like merit-based hiring processes are unfair. Well, it didn't tell you anything about the process.
It really
didn't say a damn thing.
It told us about candidates. All that it did was tell us about the candidates. That's
Tony
all
Baloney, we like your comment.
Okay, what did he say? Oh, where is it? This would explain how Biden got elected. We feel bad for him. He sniffs little kids. I mean, I guess, right? He just does. He can't help himself, right? Yeah. Oh, God.
But it continues actually, because the next one after that is the fair hiring outcomes. Is the outcome fair itself? Is the other thing that they measured. Is the process fair? Is the outcome fair? 2 different things, right? We're going to ask you a couple of questions about the outcomes of the job hiring for the high-paying job. Think about the outcomes of the job hiring and how fair you think it was, and click to answer the next questions. Questions being, it was fair that Jim got the high-paying job. It was fair that Tom did not get the high-paying job. The job hiring outcomes for Tom and Jim were fair. 1 to 6. Again, strongly disagree to strongly agree. And the reason it's phrased like that, this is a common thing in social studies surveys, is they'll ask the same question a couple of different ways just to make sure somebody's being consistent when they respond in a survey. It's one of the ways they'll screen out people who are inconsistent responders. Is like, if you're saying, in the case, you think the whole thing was fair, but then you respond, okay, it was fair for Jim, but it wasn't fair for Tom, and then the whole thing was kind of like neutral. Well, is it consistent? That's something they'll be screening for, those kinds of things in survey results. But again, go back to our beginning question. What the hell is fair?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many questions. What is fair? What was the hiring process? They never really tell us.
Mm-hmm. And this is why I consider it. I mean, it may have been nicely arranged for what they were trying to do, but they still did stuff wrong when they were doing this survey study, because you're basically relying on the participants to fill in the gap for what they think the process is.
Well, except it still did a pretty good job of proving their point that you can apparently very, very easily, without any pushback whatsoever, persuade people that a process they know nothing about is unfair.
Exactly.
So that actually should scare us all. If the participants in this survey didn't even ask before they were asked to render a decision, I strongly agree or I strongly disagree and everything in between, that a process or an outcome was fair, they told them precious little about the process.
Exactly.
That's terrifying.
The equal opportunity question was quite simply, I believe that both Jim and Tom had equal opportunity in competing for the high-paying job, going from strongly agree to strongly disagree. This
explains so much about voting patterns in America. I don't even want to think about it. I think I'm going to curl up in a fetal position for the rest of the day and binge watch like British comedy. I'm not kidding. This is actually, when I came into this to do this show, I was like, oh, this is going to be another one of those junk, the studies that like tell us a bunch of nothing. Like, no, this is telling us a lot, but none of it good. None of it good. It's actually quite terrifying.
But yeah, it's the prompts that you have to pay attention to, because that's what participants in the survey were reacting to. And I think we can both agree that none of those were actually very realistic. You actually learned nothing about the actual process or anything like that. And, some of that I can understand in abbreviating it, if only because limited amounts of space and attention span of the participants in the survey.
Okay.
Is the one thing. I can understand being brief with that for that reason. But still not a great design. And that's actual plotting of results. So like people who agreed things, people who, if it was very much agreement that the hiring process was fair, it goes closer to 6. So 6 is good. 6 is agreement. 1 is complete disagreement.
So, I mean, this is quite telling. The more information, the more sob story, let's be honest.
Yeah.
The more sob story they were given, about one of the candidates,
Mhm.
the
More sob
more,
story, less information about the process. Let's be clear about that. If you were
yes.
given no information about the process, but you were told a lot of sob stories and the person with the sob story didn't get the job, you ended up disagreeing with whether or not it was an equal opportunity, whether, well, not
Yeah.
disagreeing, because some of it goes from like, I agree, to neutral, right? Because like 356 is like neutral ish in this.
Well, this is how, yeah, this is really scary. I mean, like I said, this is a very childlike, immature view of fairness. It
Mhm.
really, it's scary. This is super scary. Like, so
This
I
is
tell
why
you
the
a sob
teaching. This is
story.
why the teaching side of it is important, because you got to teach about really what it means to be fair and what meritocracy actually is, not the
Yeah.
strange, twisted, contrived one they seem to have in here.
It's got to be. That's got to be. Going back to the comments real quickly, I just want to call something out that Leave Them Kids Alone says, crazily enough, one of my kids initially had a rejection for part-time at Walmart at age 15, saying he was unqualified. He did not tell me for a while. I'm hoping it was a mistake. He reapplied. Being rejected for running carts. I'm not sure what their qualifications are for that, but was a blow to the self-esteem, but who knows why they rejected him. Once he reapplied, he was accepted.
No,
But that does illustrate the point that that could have been completely subjective. That could have been that particular hiring manager that day was having a bad day and just felt like being a pissy pants. I mean,
yeah.
it could have been they had too many people, but they didn't want to admit that, so they said he was unqualified. It could have been a million different things.
Can I just make one request? If you want to read comments for a minute, I really have to use the bathroom.
Oh yes, I will read comments. Please
I'll be right back.
excuse yourself. All right, guys. So we're on our own. Let's have some comments. So who included political orientation? Well, that was part of the study. Part of the study was to ascertain whether, once they were looking at all these results, they wanted to know, does it make a difference in terms of how much sob story we give? That they called it information. How much information about the background of the sort of lesser candidate, based on political affiliation or political leaning. And they found that it only made a little bit of difference. It did make a difference, but not a lot. Not a lot, which is also quite scary. Tony Baloney says this would explain, yeah, how Biden got elected. See the Whole Truth says asking for fair from narcissistic psychopaths with a never-ending need for money and power and sadism eventually. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned, narcissism and psychopaths. Without going so far as to call sort of like everybody on the left, narcissistic, what I will say is it's a maladaptive, immature way of viewing the world to believe that your feelings, your emotions are reality and on par with something like demonstrated ability to do something. So, you should give me what I want because I've had it rough is something that's, like I said, it's sort of childlike. And it's also something frequently done by people high in the sort of narcissistic scale, is they'll give you a sob story to get you to feel sorry for them. And then that might help you overlook some of their less redeeming qualities and so on. It just tends to go hand in hand. Almost everybody I know who's been in any kind of like a narcissistic relationship will tell a story about how when they first met that person, they told them a sob story. There was
Yeah.
something, I had to overcome. There was some big thing. And it tends to dominate their reasons why things don't work out in their life is a sob story. Not always, but I'm just saying that we are now teaching children that the sob story has power in a world in which power and privilege and so on are how we divvy up the resources in life. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't
Yeah.
think that's going to result in mature, well-adjusted adults.
No, indeed.
Um, and then Cody says that's how they pick people for The Voice, who has the sobbiest story and who has the best voice. And it's true. Why do they do that? Well, wait till the Olympics come. We have the Olympics coming up. Every personal story is going to be the athletes, some kind of sob story, something that happened that they had to overcome. People seem to eat that up. A lot of media teaches you the sobby story is the one that should win. It's true. Very true. It's not true in the literal sense, but that's what they're teaching. And then See the Whole Truth has qualifications for that. Let's be real. My employee's kid wants a job. That could be it too. Somebody got the job, and they had to come up with a reason. And Cody says, it's kind of nice to know political affiliation didn't factor in a lot. Is that what you said, being not woke makes me feel like a gay man in the 50s? I'm kind of worried about people finding out. Tell me, Adrian, it wasn't, their political affiliation was not a huge factor. It was a factor, but it wasn't like night and day, was it?
If you scroll down a little bit, it should have actually an image where it's broken out by that, as an example. Although I think that gets into the next question, but yeah, there it is. There it is. So like left to right is the change. Left to right is liberal to conservative in the image, and so like the top line is no information, the bottom line is with information. So you can see for yourselves where it gets adjusted down. And this particular one, when you were talking about fair hiring process and outcomes, it actually was about the same. It's just that conservatives started higher up on the agreement line to begin with. So yeah,
it that's interesting.
Make too much of a difference.
I think that's more telling.
Yeah,
is that the conservative subjects or are asked the questions start off with that fairness heuristic more embedded. Like they believe that the procedure is fair from the outset. They operate on that assumption that it's fair. And then they, either they go up from there with the information. So like even with more information.
Yep.
Am I reading that correctly?
You are reading it correctly. I'm sorry. I just had a cat make an appearance.
No, that's okay. So with more information, they think it's more, they still think it's fair. They think it's more fair.
So if it's still on the same scale as the other one. So if it's going down, they're thinking it's less fair.
I see. So that's what the liberals think, it's less fair.
Yep.
And the conservatives actually think it's
the conservatives think it's more fair.
Only slightly less fair.
Yeah.
So here it is, Cody. So you see how here it was just above 4.5 and it's at 4.5. That's a tiny difference. Whereas look where it is for the liberals. It's like halfway to 4 and now it's not even at 3.5. After they got more sob story. Yeah, that tracks. That's what I would have expected. But okay. So it's a bigger difference than I thought, but it tracks with the politics.
Yeah, and it's different depending upon some of the questions. So like go back up for a minute because they changed one of the boxes when you got to the second study because the second one was about promotions, not about hiring.
Okay, so this is this one, the meritocratic promotion process and outcome.
Yeah. So like Jim and Tom have both worked hard and graduated college. They now continue to work hard at the same company and have similar jobs. There is a new opportunity for a promotion to a better position at their workplace with a higher salary and more benefits. Their boss has to decide which one to promote, Jim or Tom. Their boss is focusing only on promoting the most qualified employee. He is going to promote the employee who has shown higher performance over time and readiness for a position with additional responsibilities. Based on these two requirements, Jim is the clear choice. Jim has consistently performed a better job than Tom, showing that he had more experience working and or interning at similar companies. Additionally, Jim is better at handling responsibilities, which is a likely consequence of many extracurricular activities he managed during his university years. Tom, on the other hand, has consistently performed at a lower level than Jim and has also shown a lower ability to handle extra work responsibilities. This is probably a consequence of having less work-related experience, given that he has not done any internships or extracurricular activities before joining the company. Their boss decides to promote Jim. And the other thing that's provided is that same sob story from before.
Well, can I just jump in here? Imagine let me read it without their editorializing.
Yeah.
And listen to the difference. Jim and Tom have both worked hard and graduated college. They now continue to work hard at the same company and have similar jobs. There is a new opportunity for promotion to a better position at their workplace with a higher salary and more benefits. Their boss has to decide which one to promote, Jim or Tom. Their boss is focused only on promoting the most qualified employee. He's going to promote the employee. So we get all that, right? Then it says, Jim is the clear choice. Jim has consistently performed a better job than Tom. Additionally, Jim is better at handling responsibilities. Tom, on the other hand, has consistently performed at a lower level than Jim and has shown a lower ability to handle extra responsibilities. Their boss decides to promote Jim. I removed all of the editorializing.
Yep.
These people went in and did the thinking for the subject.
Yep.
Like, well, this is probably because this, and this is a likely result of that. And well, this guy had this stuff and that guy didn't have that stuff. They've done all the thinking for them. It's called leading the witness.
And
It's literally leading the witness.
this is the no information box for this particular study, the promotion study. The information box was that same Staub story from before.
This is the no information box?
Yep. Yep.
So they provide all this editorializing without the information?
Yep.
There's more sob story to come.
No, it's so if you look in the, like it says, actually, yeah, right there where it says materials and procedures. So it talks about what it was for the second study. So in both conditions, participants read about the same meritocratic promotion process and its outcomes in box 3. In the background inequality information condition, participants received information about the presence of socioeconomic disadvantages in one of the employees' backgrounds and socioeconomic advantages in the other employee's background. This information was identical to study 1. So if you go back to box 2, that's what they were showing for that sob story for the same thing. In the promotion.
See. So the extra information is that the reason that Tom didn't have extracurriculars, didn't have internships, didn't all the things, well, he was socioeconomically lower, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. This is so frustrating. It drives me crazy because for the past at least 20 years, at least actually Thomas Sowell complained about it himself in his not in social justice fallacies, but it in the interviews he did for the book by Jason Riley about Maverick, the book.
Yeah.
He talks about getting so frustrated when he was a professor in the 70s with affirmative action and kids getting into college and kids getting access to internships and kids getting access to all kinds of things because of their race, when then they'd end up in the college and they couldn't do the work. People keep ignoring it, acting like it's 1950 or something. They keep ignoring the fact that it is actually, in some cases, easier to get internships and access to extracurricular activities and so forth and so on if you are socioeconomically disadvantaged. Forget race. Let's leave race out of it completely. If you're socioeconomically disadvantaged, because a lot of companies, banks, et cetera, are motivated, incentivized. Look, 2008, the Community Reinvestment Act forced to pour money into these socioeconomically disadvantaged communities with internships, scholarships, all kinds of extracurricular activities, summer camp, you name it, that the kids who are a little more economically advantaged don't get access to because they're deemed to not need them. That no other thing. They're not going to look at the family's in chaos because dad's in the military and he's not home, and or the mom lost her job and they have a chronic disease in the family. Like, we're not looking at any of that. The baseline income is higher, therefore, no, you don't get access. And meanwhile, this kid's getting handed opportunities left, right, and center. But we're going to pretend that socioeconomic status is like a blanket slam of the door. To internships, extracurriculars, et cetera. And then we give that information to the people in the study, and they conclude that the reason that this guy, Tom, is less able to do the job is solely because of not having those things. And again, no credit given to the fact that maybe Jim had to go look for those opportunities, and maybe Tom would have had them handed to them, but he didn't take any because he was too damn lazy. And by the way, he's not very smart. Those things are not even taken into account. Well, I'm sorry, but talent is a thing. Intelligence is a thing. I see it every day. I've worked with enough people in jobs over the past 35 years.
You're a lot older than I am. That's almost as long as I've been alive.
Okay. So I worked a few jobs, and that's not counting my teenager jobs. Then we get up to 40 years. So if we talk about 40 years of employment, and I've worked with a fair share of people who I'm actually surprised they made it to work that day at all. That's how, and it's gotten worse. With every subsequent job as time has gone on, I've been shaking my head wondering how these people are functioning. At all.
But
because
did you,
they're just not very bright.
But did you notice again, there was actually nothing about the process? Yes,
there's nothing about the process, and the entire thing is so incredibly biased towards, that this is the most Marxist study I've read in a long time. This is literally saying your socioeconomic class defines you.
And
this is America. This is, are we now in like Tsarist Russia?
And let's be clear, you and I are not saying we don't want people of of different of lower
Of
income
course
backgrounds.
not.
We're not saying that. We want them to do that, but at the same time, this is this is
We're
not
just
helpful.
saying it's not automatically unfair. First of
Yep.
all, you can't decide if the process was fair if you don't know what the process was. So let's just have that as the starting premise. After that, you can't decide it's automatically unfair if the guy who grew up poor didn't get the job. That is literally saying that people of a higher socioeconomic class are automatically, like ahead and unfairly, unjustly, and they shouldn't be.
Yep.
And we need to adjust to rectify that. That is Marxism.
Yep. Exactly.
That's literally what it is.
And I will remind folks in the chat, I occurred to me I could share the link in the chat. So I actually put a link to the survey, to the study in the chat. So
Okay,
y'all
I'm
can
gonna-
follow along if you like.
Yeah, I'll pin it to the tippy top so it won't get lost. But wowsy wow. All right. So I think we've covered this at least to make our point,
Well,
right?
look,
Or what did we
there's
miss?
one more point to make with this, because they didn't just go for like specific cases of individual people. They also wanted to ask the question, could just providing general information about inequalities in society have the same effect?
Oh no.
That didn't get talked about in the Daily Mail article. They just talked about the one thing, but they did go to that extra step and change that information case, that box 2, to a different thing. I think there's like a box 4 or something like that has it. Yeah, it's box 4.
Okay, so
down there. It's down there as a ways, but it's some very generalized stuff. Allow me to
Oh God.
comment. Some people have always been very hardworking kids. In addition, some of these people also happen to grow up in families that always have a lot of money to buy them what they need and to make sure they always attend the best schools. In this type of family, parents always make sure to spend time playing with their kids while they're growing up. When it comes time for college, people who come from these families are usually able to go to the best universities and do not have to worry about working to pay for their degree. So these people have time to study and participate in unpaid extracurricular activities that they know are important for getting a job when they graduate.
Hate them. They are bad people. I'm sorry, continue.
Other people have always been very hardworking kids too, but some of these people also happen to grow up in families that do not have nearly enough money to buy them what they need and make sure that they attend the best schools. In this type of family, parents never have time to spend playing with the kids while they are growing up. When it comes time for college, people who come from these families are usually not able to go to the best universities and have to worry about working to pay for their degree. So these people have to split their time between studying and working to make ends meet and cannot afford to participate in unpaid extracurricular activities that they know are important for getting a job when they graduate. There's a typo in the prompt, actually, because if you look, it says make ends me instead of ends meet.
Me, yeah. I just would like to say that I was a Gen Xer raised on hose, water, and neglect, and my father, despite being a partner in a big law firm in New York City, was like never home. So this whole like people who have money have all this time on their hands to play with their children is horse hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Part of why they have money is they're workaholics, or they're working their butts off to maintain that position that they have, because that's what's expected of that job that they have that pays that money.
Mm-hmm.
It's this notion that you get by yourself all this leisure time when you make a lot of money. Oh my God.
How can such stuff, box 4, appear in a research paper? Yeah, Patrick. That's what I wonder too.
I've missed you, Patrick. Where have you been? Another scientist has joined the chat.
Patrick, this didn't appear in a research paper. This was actually the information provided in a survey prompt for folks responding to a survey on whether or not they think merit-based hiring is fair when provided with information like that. The premise of the research article is, can we teach people to think that merit-based hiring is unfair by providing background information about socioeconomic stuff?
And tragically, the answer was yes. We can teach people to completely disregard all variables except the sob story we've told them about the candidates, and they will go along with it.
Mhm.
So yes,
But
you please
that's the
be
thing.
suitably horrified.
But do you see there's 2 things about this that bug me. For one thing, it's a lot of straw men because it's making presumptions about, this, that, and the next thing, but it's also a false dichotomy. It's utterly a false dichotomy. It's either
Yeah.
this or it's this,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But that's not true.
I just said so. I literally just gave you like, hello, living, breathing example. And I went to school with other kids who could. We were some people whose parents could do. Except
Deb, according to that, you're a unicorn.
I'm not. But I'm not. I went to people I went to school with, even when I went to prep school. Part of why we went to prep school was our parents didn't have time to spend with us at all. So, in order for us to have anything resembling a healthy, upper childhood, we had to go where, there would be some stuff arranged for us to do because otherwise we'd be left alone all through our adolescence. I mean, this idea that people who have any amount of money have all kinds of leisure time is just so bogus. I've never had more leisure time in my life than I do now, and I don't work. I don't have a full-time job.
Yep.
But whenever I had a full-time job, I was like, I didn't have time to breathe. So,
Mhm.
and the more money I made, the less time I had. It's not the other way around.
Mhm.
It is so Marxist. It's completely 100% a Marxist point of view that it goes hand in hand, that this bourgeoisie notion of we have all this money to sit around and do whatever, especially for our kids, is complete BS. And then if you tell this to the study participants, do we know anything about the study participants, like who they were?
No, I mean, aside, I mean, you can see with I think that's study 4 that you got right there. You can see it in the participants thing right next to the box there. That's as much as they'll typically give you is the thing of like, how many did we have? How did we get a hold of them? Because there's different like
Oh,
survey things.
they use something called prolific.
Yep.
Look at that. Okay, guys, everything just changed. Not changed. I mean, it's just like kind of doubled down. They use something that already by itself has a strong liberal bias.
To their own admission, which at least they admitted it.
At least they admitted it. That was very nice of them. But they put together a study that's Marxist and then gave it to a bunch of people who lean liberal. And then they come back with these results. And then they publish an article. And then there's a subsequent Daily Mail article about it. You see how this happens?
Mm-hmm.
Now picture all the so-called research-based pedagogy going into your school. Just let that sit there. Just let that sit out there. Next time your school says it's research-based.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
Yes.
they will never. It is very much because you'd have to deal with lots of IRB rules and what have you. They will never give you specific information about. They will never give you enough information that you could identify where the participants were and things like that. The most you would get about a participant is, are they conservative or liberal in this case? Are they woman? Are they man? Are they, that kind of thing? They won't allow you, they won't even retain like geographic identifying information, and for good reason. There's a lot of rules about that in terms of just making sure you're minimizing potential harms to your human subjects when you do this. This falls into the category of human subjects research.
So in the last analysis, what did they conclude?
So the last one was whether or not all of this intervention that they basically had with targeted information and what have you translates into support for policy.
Oh, so that's really what it really comes down to is policy support right here.
Yep.
We measured support for organizational policies that promote socioeconomic diversity in organizations. Never mind whether they can do the job.
Mm-hmm.
In organizations with an average composite of the following 4 items: using hiring processes that remove prestigious brand name universities from resumes, using hiring processes that remove prestigious brand name companies from resumes, making internships less of a requirement for getting hired, and putting more weight on job-related experience when evaluating a job candidate.
See, these are things a lot of us do anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like I have a general rule, and I do this with peer review, and I typically try to do it often with peer review, is that I read nothing about the names of the authors or where they come from or anything like that, because it doesn't matter. It's their ideas in the article that matter. In the same kind of way I look at it with hiring of students. I don't particularly care which university exactly you came from, and
Right.
frankly, I'm not a huge fan of Harvard and Penn right now. given their particular
I would
situations.
explicitly I would explicitly count that against a candidate
Um,
right now.
but I deliberately try to even avoid looking at which university a student came from because that tells me nothing about their qualifications at this point. Um,
Yeah, no, it's true. It really is true. And I've said it many times to people. I wish that I could not put my where I went to college and grad school on my resume because I don't want it to sway anyone positively or negatively. I would much rather they
mhm,
talk to me because the amount of bias one way or the other based on the name brand of where you went to school is off the charts.
yeah.
And I would never want to get a job either way. I don't want it to be the reason I get a job because people be sorely disappointed if they think, oh, she went to Penn. That's awesome. That means that she agrees with XYZ, which I don't. Or conversely, oh, she went to University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education. She must be some far left wing woke lunatic, which I'm not.
Mhm.
So, I
So I
would
mean,
rather just not put it there, but
yeah,
I
no,
have to put it
and I
there.
think in the irony of it is I actually very much agree with some of the things of doing that.
Yeah.
The thing they're talking about with doing it. It's more of a question of is that kind of argument for, well, let's put it this way. Somebody just looking at the takeaway, the takeaway conclusion that they put. This
Yeah.
increases support for diversity, diversity-based policy initiatives, right?
Right.
Kind of thing. If you're just looking at that top line, you would think somebody might think, "Oh, support for DEI, let's say."
Right. Right.
Right. But does that say that? Because there is more support. The results they did find, of course, there's more support for those specific actions that they defined as policy support.
But this isn't DEI.
Exactly.
So again, with the did they support this isn't like you said, these are just policies and policies that people can choose to do right now and have been choosing to do for decades.
Mhm.
And it should be left up to the employer to decide what to do. I don't think we should have a policy, let's say a public policy to do this, nor do I think this is what DEI talks about at
No,
all.
DEI doesn't talk about that at all. But here's the point. The point in that, and this is why I go back to going back to the Daily Mail article and how wrong it was in describing this article. This is why I encourage people, as much as it's a pain in the butt to read these articles, because yes, you do have to sift through technical jargon and things like that. Go read it because this doesn't support
Yeah.
the sort of broad reaching social justice related initiatives. It supports actually some things that are pretty damn common sense.
Well, exactly. I mean, so I'm getting down. Here it says, yet while the majority of Americans today continue to endorse merit-based procedures as fair, our results show that it does not take much to change these perceptions. There you go. That's what I've been saying. Like, hey, guys, you can keep your meritocracy, maybe. Our key finding is that people are able to attach past inequalities to their evaluation of current meritocratic practices, lickety
but
split, apparently.
but what are they relying on to make that conclusion? They're relying on people to fill in the gap in terms of what the meritocratic process is in their survey study
Right.
here. They
Right.
didn't actually give a definition for we did it this way, we did it this way, we did it this
No.
way. No specific definition of what the actual process was
But
that would match anything in the real world. You're actually
like I
relying on the
said,
participants to fill it in.
and the participants were allowing themselves to be relied upon.
Yeah.
I mean, first thing I would do if somebody handed me this questionnaire is I'd be writing, there's not enough information here. I have many questions. I
Yeah.
can't answer. I don't
Yeah.
know if I agree. This is why I don't like these little political tests of strongly agree, disagree. I'm like, well, I know which answer you want me to pick if you want it
Mhm.
to turn out this way, but I don't have enough information or it's
Mhm.
specifically
Now, I
written in.
will for one thing for reference, if you or somebody else is ever asked to do one of these surveys, understand something that this probably had to go through IRB approval. And if it had institutional review board, for those of you who don't know, but if it had to go through that, if it had to go through that particular process, the rules of IRBs are such that you have the right to question and challenge and raise your concerns about anything and everything in the survey, as well as the whole process of maintaining anonymity and all of that. You have the right to question that both with the authors of the survey and with the institutional review board responsible for overseeing it. So
That's
don't
right.
forget, you always have the right to ask those kinds of questions, anything that you would
Yeah.
like of them.
Yeah, why would you? I mean, if you've agreed to be part of a survey and then you know that they're going to use this information potentially to make public policy that could affect your life or whatever. I mean, you don't just go into it and go, well, I'm missing half the piece of information I would need to make a proper assessment of whether I agree or disagree. Well, I'm just going to pick one. I mean, this is how we end up with Lucy Calkins reading programs.
Yeah.
This is how we end up with all kinds of problems in our society because people, I agree. Oh, I don't agree. It's like, stop, take a breath. Do you have enough information to even form an opinion? Well, never mind agree or disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Agree means I endorse this. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way I'm reading through these scenarios. I'm like, you just completely led. Anyway,
so the thing I want to say about the conclusions and the sort of short version of how to read one of these papers like this is this general discussion will usually have the conclusions of the paper, what the authors make of their results. So that's where you have to ask, and this is why the methods become important. Reading the methods. This is why reading the methods become important too, is because you have to ask, do the methods that they did for the study support the conclusions that they're making?
The lack of public outrage about rising inequality is aligned with the widespread endorsement of meritocratic ideologies in the West, particularly in the United States.
Yeah, there's a lot of those assumptions.
Meritocratic practices that reward people based on their achievements continue to represent the gold standard of organizational fairness. I was going to
say, we read that earlier.
Yeah.
We read that same line about gold standard of organizational fairness earlier.
But
there was a copy paste from earlier in the article. Anyway,
while Americans today continue to endorse merit-based procedures, fair results show that it does not take much to change these. They sound glad because they sound like they're very appalled at how, there's the lack of public outrage is probably the result of too many people in the West, or people in the West still think that meritocracy is a good thing. But, it doesn't take much to change their minds.
Mm-hmm.
This is terrifying. I mean, I think if you really sit with this study for a little while and, let it percolate, you will realize that there are people out there actively working to figure out how to destroy meritocracy.
Yeah.
They genuinely believe this is a problem that they want to solve, that this kind of inequality resulting from meritocracy is a problem that they should be solving by eliminating meritocracy. I'm scared to death. All right. Yeah. I want to go back. Oh, sorry.
There is that. And that's the point that I want to make. And yeah, Patrick says rising inequality, many question marks. There's a lot of those assumptions made in the article, Patrick. That's one of the problems with it.
What movie is this? See the Whole Truth. I know this is from a movie. Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. This is a line. I forgot where it's from, but I know it's a line. Tell me in the chat. Marxists love labeling and then attacking the label, even though it's not true. True. And leave them kids alone, says Hogwash. Poor kids can absolutely succeed. Instead of doing bad things, they could get books from the school library and read them Friday nights to improve vocabulary.
Ghostbusters. Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. Ghostbusters.
That's what it is. Thank you.
See the Whole Truth had it. Thank you.
I knew I heard it before. And Patrick says, I come from a relatively poor background. I got several scholarships. They were all based on performance, and I would have been ashamed to get a job because of my socioeconomic background. Just as I would have been ashamed to have gotten a job based on some kind of nepotistic, oh, we like your dad, so we're hiring you.
Oh, yeah. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, I would be ashamed if I got a job or an award or something like that because of my sex. I've talked about this before.
Yes. No, I just want to know that I deserve to be there because then I feel pretty confident about my ability to continue doing the job. I'm not going to, get fired or something later. Yeah, these people don't understand that. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people argue that rich people don't do work. They think CEOs do nothing all day. Oh boy, that's not true. Now you can dislike CEOs for other reasons, but they're not lazy. They had great tools for teaching. Those got removed from the nonsense lessons. And then I'm not about to get into the CEO thing. If one position needs to make that much money and difference the percentage beneath, they better be giving out some pretty hefty bonuses. This I will agree with. I mean, I don't think that government or anybody else should set the standard of what a CEO should be paid. That's for boards of directors to do. But I do think that it is difficult to justify the massive discrepancy between what that person is paid and what people who are doing the work are paid. It's not that they're comparable jobs. It just is a very strange thing, especially when you do mass layoffs and you do all that kind of stuff. And I understand all the arguments about responsibility and burden and stress and this, that. Yeah, I get it. But after a point, it's pretty massive. It doesn't really make sense to most people. And thankfully, there are companies out there. I mean, they're not some of the big brand names, but that where the CEO of the company is purposely elected to take salaries that were only X percentage higher than their, highest paid other, non-executive employee. And I think that creates a lot of trust, and it's something that people should consider. I just don't want it forced on them, by the government. Let's see. Then Patrick says, so Boeing should hire engineers based on their socioeconomic background rather than their competency. Sounds like a great plan. I know we were talking about that with brain surgeons too. And then Boeing, there's always these extra parts. Don't know why.
It was a Boeing plane where the door blew out, I think.
Yes, exactly. Reed says, you're all lying illusionists. All American flights that have crashed with white pilots. So they look at those stats and say, we should give what?
I have no idea what the heck he's
I have no idea what that means. Okay. We have a bad record of flying, so looked elsewhere. Easy business. I don't even know what that means. So
I don't know what that's going on about.
But no one is here talking about race. Like, hello, we're not. We're actually just saying, let's not. I cracked up when I saw the recent headline, plane stewardess strike for more pay. And I thought, oh no, there goes 40 hours of training. Coffee makers need strikes. Oh, wow. Actually, they apparently do have a lot of training and all kinds of like conflict resolution and safety stuff. And I don't know.
Well, I mean, because of what the stewardesses have to put up with.
Flight attendants, get it right. Come on.
Flight attendants. Oh, forgive me.
You're not allowed to call them stewardesses anymore. Oh, God. Any leading at all, regardless of how good the argument is or how little information is, leads people to agree with whatever the leader wants, which is why I think it's terrifying. I agree, Cody. My biggest problem with this, having been raised by lawyers, is I can't read this stuff without like my dad in my head or my grandfather in my head being like, objection, leading the witness, objection, calls for conclusion, objection, like litigators in my house. I'd be sitting at the dinner table and I'd say something and we're like, where'd you get that information? Where's your evidence? Provide it now. It's like,
yeah.
I only won one time. You should know. When I said that only female mosquitoes bite you or sting you, whatever, suck your blood. Not really bite, but they suck your blood. And my father was like, no way. That's can't be true. Whatever. Where'd you get that information? And we had because we were very privileged. We had the Encyclopedia Britannica right behind the dinner table, not even joking, in the bookshelf that lined the walls of the room where we ate. And I got up and I got the damn thing and I looked up mosquitoes in the micro encyclopedia and I found it and I shoved it in his face. I remember this so well. I was probably like 16 years old or something. And I shoved it in his face and he's like, well, what do you know? Like, I'll be damned, right? But that was my great claim to fame, was that I said that only the female mosquitoes bite you. And so anyway, there's that.
The one thing I put in the chat is actually an article that rebuts the notion of getting rid of merit. It's In Defense of Merit in Science, which is a really brilliant piece with a who's who of authors that basically rebuts a whole bunch of arguments about why we shouldn't get rid of why we should get rid of merit. So for those who want it, that's a good read too, and it is also open access. So
I really like what it says here. Hang on a second. See if I can.
Yeah, it was published last year, and of all places, the Journal of Controversial Ideas.
The Journal of Controversial Ideas.
It was the only place they could get it published, because they tried to get it published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and they got some really nasty reviews in response. How could you think merit is a good thing? That kind of lays.
But look at this. It's a central pillar of liberal epistemology, humanism, and democracy. Mm-hmm. We've forgotten that. That's why I keep coming back to the other one. That's communism. That other one, that's Marxism. Literal communism and Marxism. That whole paper, that whole research thing, all of it, everything about how they did it is trying to like nudge people closer to being okay with that and calling it fairness, calling that sort of like equality of outcome fair. Right. And whereas this is actually when they say, our democracy is in danger. No, you mean your communism is in danger. Mm-hmm. So then, did you want to quickly talk about the DEI research at all, or just at least point to the article? Or what do you think?
I mean, we can talk about it briefly. It's a long article, so I don't think we'll have a whole
we're
lot
not
of time
going
to go through it today.
This. Yeah, we're going to I'm going to drop this in the chat.
But can we go back to the other article? There's one thing I wanted to point out at the end.
I'm sorry. Which one?
The crazy article.
The crazy article. Okay, sorry. That's all you had to say. Go back to the crazy article, Deb. Okay, here we
Yes.
go.
Yes. So at the very end, of course, you always got to ask, are the conclusions supported by the methods, right? Go to the very end of the article, very last paragraph, all the way at the end. Yeah.
Okay, here. This one, while our studies have focused, this one?
Yep, but the very last paragraph here. Together, our results suggest that previous inequalities can disrupt the perceived fairness of meritocracy, suggesting that we may need to rethink some of the takeaways from the larger body of literature that has been informing policymakers and hirers everywhere for the past decades. Is that statement supported by what the study actually does?
Okay, let me think about it. Together, our results suggest that previous inequalities can disrupt the perceived fairness of meritocracy, suggesting that we may need to rethink some of the takeaways from the large body of literature that has been informing policymakers and hirers everywhere for the past decades. No, it does not.
Exactly. But that is the
Not even close.
that is the key statement that the Daily Mail article keyed off of.
Wow. Okay. So let me go back and remind people what that headline was. Okay. So this headline is what American Psychological Association claims merit-based hiring is unfair.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what goes back to this last little statement saying that we need to revisit the takeaways that the fairness heuristic is, legit.
Yep. There you go.
Wow. So, okay, it sounds to me like the takeaway from this show is when you see study says, go find the actual study. Don't just read the article about it. Go to the actual study. Fast forward to the conclusion of the study, read the conclusion, then go back and read the study, see if the study supports the conclusion, and then see if that supports the headline in the article. And you will come closer to understanding how we are being manipulated on a daily basis. Because that's my so very scientific. That's my so very scientific conclusion to all of this.
And more so, you can understand, whether or not the news article you're reading is reporting a study correctly, whether or not the study itself is making conclusions correct based upon the research that they did. And I mean, there might be some argument in that. We're just informing them about perceived inequalities, right? Is what they're doing. So yeah, the previous inequalities that exist, sure, can disrupt the perceived fairness and meritocracy, right? Well, no, you're teaching them this odd, strange thing that doesn't necessarily match up to reality. So there's argumentation you could have there, but at least to my mind in reading that, no, that statement's not supported by what was done in the study.
If you guys have seen the viral video about the teacher taking apart the comment about J.K. Rowling, it's out there. I think his name is Warren Smith or something. But anyway, he talks about he kind of pulls apart the kid's argument. If you were to use that kind of teaching method, Socratic method, to take some of the assumptions and claims in this paper and pull them apart, you would end up with students or people at the end going, yeah, I feel stupid now. They would say the same thing. The difference is some of us don't need to go through that process because we look at the prompts and we're like, yeah, but you don't know wait, what? Where'd you get this information? You're filling in a lot of blanks that you don't have evidence to back up. And it used to be that, I won't say the average person, but a higher percentage of people, especially if they were college graduates, would be able to I'm not that bright, you guys. I'm not the, I'm just what used to be an average person.
Yep.
And we now are at a place where we're graduating people from Ivy League institutions who can't do what for me is like breathing. And the only reason I can do it, well, aside from having those lawyers in my house, is I was taught how to do it too. It was reinforced and reinforced and reinforced constantly. If I'd sat there in class, even in my public school, believe it or not, and just made wild statements, it would be like, wait a minute, back that up. There's no way I'd get away with half of this stuff.
Oh, yeah. But this is where I go back to the teaching thing, because I bet you very much that the logic part of this is not being taught to kids, such they would be able to pick out some of the things that we've picked out. And then you go on to be adults and,
Yeah, that is really, really scary.
But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that before we went to the
No,
other
that
thing.
is really important. I'm glad that you did that. I'm really glad that you did that. So I did promise everyone that you would come up with a new title for
Damn
the
it. I was hoping
article.
you'd forget that.
No way. Based on reality, what should be the accurate title of a news piece about this paper or about this study?
Study claims that you can teach people a non-existent process is unfair using sob stories.
That works. You're a lot nicer than I am. Mine would be study shows gaslighting works. Or study shows Americans are very susceptible to sob stories.
Hey, chat, with all that you've heard, how would you retitle this Daily
How would
Mail
you
article?
retitle it? Study shows Americans on the brink of becoming, Marxist with a little bit of nudge. Tell them a sob story. They're one sob story away from Marxism. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Cody's got the first one for you.
Okay, let's see what Cody's come up with. American Psychological Association wants you to feel bad for me. Oh, that's fabulous. I love it. All right, let's see what some of these other comments. You guys come up with some other titles. I'm going through the comments and I'm waiting for you. So let's see. Cody says, I watch a lot of Bose versus the World. It's true crime, but she watches a lot of court TV. Let's see. So very much into judicial process is a Zoomer. And See the Whole Truth says, I remember that journal. It was when it was called Mad Magazine. Cody says, leading the witness. See the Whole Truth is, so Eagle Brain's just laughing. Let's see. What do we got after that? We've got, yikes. Come on. Okay. So they're all giggling. Patrick says you have a beautiful cat.
Yeah, Piper came in a few times.
Yes, Piper is adorable. Luna is also equally beautiful. Let's see. Cody says, by the way, I see both left and right using positive and negative framing, and I hate that. I don't think you need to frame any of this to be correct. You're speaking my language, Cody. This drives me crazy every time I see these things framed. And then I have students I tutor, and I have to point it out to them. I'll say, well, what's the framing? How is this framed? And they look at me like, what do you mean what do you mean? And so I have to ask all these questions around it to get them to identify that what they're looking at or what they're reading is a framing and not facts. It's just taking the facts and positioning them. And I'll have to ask them, like, what's another way that you could have framed this? Let's frame it positively. Let's frame it negatively. And you see the look on their faces when, that light bulb comes on. It's like, it's scary. It's really actually quite scary. So then we've got, then he says, but that's the only thing anyone's going to read. And that's what headlines are going to be. Absolutely true. It's all about who's pushing the agenda. Tony Baloney says, my uncle is a lawyer. I was in Catholic school, and whenever I'd go to confession, the priest would say, do you have anything to confess? I'd say, nice try, Padre, but I plead the fifth.
Cute. I have to try that the next time I'm in a confessional, since I'm
Patrick
Catholic.
says, same comments apply to all climate alarmist news. Yep. It's framed. Giorgio Quattrocento says, let me be a child and wreck things. I don't care about the field of study. I deserve to exist. Oh God, that's science lately, isn't it? Kids are indoctrinated in schools. They're not taught to think.
I will tell you, there's a whole thing going on in, social psychology. It's one of the social psychology journals where there's been this whole kerfluffle because a poster was removed from a conference, supposedly for being Islamophobic.
Oh dear.
And all they did was actually report on the survey results. So there's the whole thing in the psychological side. Lee Gisteman on Safe Science on Substack has a whole breakdown of it. I haven't had the chance to read it all the way through yet, but it's a ridiculous thing. I'm sorry. There was a kerfuffle about it, claiming it was Islamophobic, and all they were doing was talking about survey results in Islamic countries for certain questions. That's all.
Wow. Okay. Now, Tony says the American Psychological Association study shows that merit-based hiring is batshit crazy.
There we go.
Let's see.
Apparently, See the Whole Truth thought you had
I
the
had to
perfect
go to the
sweep on the
gaslighting
title.
works. Yeah. Okay. The revolution has already happened. It has, in fact. What we're trying to do is be counter revolutionaries. Hodor. Bob, that's the perfect title. Hodor. That was a sob story. And they left it to the end. They left it to the end, the sob story. Well, that explains everything. This is, yeah, I mean, I'm laughing hysterically, but obviously the truth of the matter is that this is really flippin' terrifying that we have researchers in psychology, already a broken field, that are using their time, energy, and money. Presumably they got a grant somewhere to do this, to find out what's the nudge? What do we need to do? How much information? How much editorializing? What's it gonna, because there's stuff in the study that is part of the study, but not part of the study, if you get my drift. They aren't gonna write down. So we tweaked what we wrote and we did some thinking for them and then see what but there's still, anybody reading this is going to get that out of it. I got that out of it. Policymakers are going to get that out of it. Don't you think?
Yeah.
And they're going to realize, okay, guys, back to the K-12 people. All we need to do is amp up the sob stories. Let's go. More struggle literature.
I just noticed something about that article, actually, because I'm looking online, and usually, if it's a publicly funded grant that paid for that, it is an obligation to include the funding source somewhere in an acknowledgement section or something like that.
See if you can find it. Meantime, Giorgio Quattrocento has a great title. American Psychological Association says, you being better than me at something is a challenge to my employment and mental health. It's just unfair. You can use fewer words, Giorgio. It's just unfair.
But
it's either unfair or just not true. There's no such thing as me being better at something than you. That's imaginary. That's part of the bourgeois capitalistic, view of the world, that people are better than other people at things.
But
very bourgeois.
There's actually there's no funding information in the article.
So it's private then, in all likelihood.
It may be private. It may have been funded by the university itself. It may have been funded by a foundation grant.
If it was funded by the university itself, that's worse.
Yeah. And it's distinctly possible that the two universities together did that. But because there's two universities represented in the author list.
Should we find out more information about the background of the researchers?
Well, I'm not interested in doing that one right now. But
I was just saying, if it was fair, fair for them to be given the money for the research. I mean, I'm just curious. Let's see. Patrick says, so the article says that all professors with degrees should be fired and replaced by people with no college degrees. Well, it wasn't really fair, Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
The process wasn't fair because the people without college degrees, if presumably they had parents. See, those were part of some people have parents that paid for it and stuff. They must have been some people. Mm-hmm. We can conclude, we can infer that because they have college degrees, they had all these other privileges, because people who have low socioeconomic status didn't, they had to work. Mm-hmm. Don't you know? Anyway, I think we've covered the topic. What do you think?
Well, I'm just saying, do you want to get to the other article or do you want to save it for another day?
To do it justice, I'm going to just show it to people so I can get them wanting to come back and watch this another time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think to do it proper justice, this is what the title is. What DEI research concludes about diversity training. It is divisive, counterproductive, and unnecessary. I know you're all shocked, but but we'll go into it in our next episode.
Yeah, and I mean this is why it's this is why I think, Deb, it's a good idea not to go into this today, just because we've already been on for a while.
No, we can't possibly do it justice. It's a long paper. It's a long article.
It's a report. It's a report by a foundation, so you got to take that into account, that it is a foundation. So those kinds of things come in, and who paid for it and all that. But it is very thorough, actually.
Eagle Brain wants us to do this again.
So okay, I'm game.
I'm game. Everybody knows I have no life. Right. I have no life. I have nothing to do. I'm kidding. So let's see. Yeah, we'll do it again.
But it's
It's
extremely thorough. It's from the Aristotle Foundation, and it goes through disconnects and the efficacy part of it and what have you. And it mirrors very much because Musa Al-Gharbi did a great piece for Real Clear Science in 2020 that was very much the same thing in review of literature and whether or not these diversity things work. And a question for y'all to be thinking about for next time, because this is about diversity training, right? And the educational side that comes with training. But there's an argument now, well, training didn't work, so we should just embed all these things in our practices and in our businesses and not be in the training, but just embed all these principles in there. Ask the question, would it work if it was embedded, if it didn't work in a training?
Yeah, and that's one of my things that I've been thinking since the beginning of DEI is like, would anyone put up with this? Like if it was just done, if you just were saying these things to people randomly, and the answer would be you probably get punched in the nose.
Oh, Fit American has another title for you.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is that a title? APA invests in tanning bed companies?
I feel like we could just have fun with this in a chat if we do more of these collabs. Like, it's just to rename the articles, guys.
Make up new titles, rename the articles. I want to know what this means. See the whole truth is Deb will only work on her decorating, otherwise we have to help her.
I think See the Whole Truth is agreeing with Ego Brain and thinking you'll end up decorating if you don't do more collabs.
Oh. Is my decorating that bad?
No, I think it looks fine. I don't know.
Does it need that much work? I mean, this is not indicative of the rest of my house, just so you know.
That is what she's saying. Yeah, See the Whole Truth is saying, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, now they say no.
Oh.
Well, what is it?
Oh, I see. Because it's what like side part Karens do on the weekend is decorate. Is that it? Is it like a joke about that?
I have no idea. I'm totally guessing. I screwed that one up. Sorry.
If Kieran were here, he'd say, "Oh, there goes Deb and her autism again." Weaponized autism. She doesn't get it. I'm pretty convinced at this point that I'm like somewhere on there. Honestly, my dad for sure was, and there's so many things where I think I get it, and people are like, "No, you didn't get it." I'm like, "I didn't." Oh, that was a joke. Okay. Anyway, side part Karens. I made that up. I've never heard that before, but if I had $1 for every person who went to one of my, for example, my Tom McDonald reaction videos and told me that they saw my picture on the thumbnail and they thought for sure it was just going to be some Karen reacting to Tom McDonald, and they were so pleasantly surprised that it was like something else. And so I asked my kids, I was like, what is the deal? Like, why do I look like a Karen? Like, it's just a picture of it. Like, it's the side part, Mom. It's the side part. And I was like, what is the deal with the side part? I don't understand. Like, why?
I don't understand that.
For starters, this is my natural part. You can see I have
Yeah.
I've tried to do a middle part and it's like, it doesn't work. I've tried. I've gone to the hair place and they've tried it. It doesn't work. This is where if I just comb my hair, it goes like that. So
I mean, my natural part is a middle part, but then again, my middle part, it's also like super wavy most of the time. So
yeah, it goes,
straight.
It goes where it goes. At one point in time, I think in my early 30s, I made a whole point of I'm going to retrain my part, damn it. And I tried to like get it to go the other way, tried to get it to go in the middle. But look, there's even like, I have this like weird backwards widow peak. Do you see this?
Yes, I do.
It's like a hole. So I can't part in the middle. I look like I lost hair. Like I had somebody pull a chunk of it out or something.
No, you haven't lost hair. Your hair looks fine.
Yeah, whatever. But I mean, I'm convinced that's what my kids said. They're like, it's the side part, Mom. It's the side part. I was like, oh, thank you for.
I don't understand that, but okay.
Apparently, it makes it like the way to look younger is to have like a middle part or a messy part, like no part. But side parts apparently are old. It's like an old thing. I don't know. I don't speak Gen Z or whatever they are, the little babies of the Gen Zers. What are they? Generation Alpha. That's it.
Yeah, I think it's Gen Alpha now.
Yeah. Anyway, so you guys, well, first of all, Adrian, thank you for doing this.
Of course. Not to scare everybody to death, but
yeah, like I said, I wasn't kidding. I'm gonna go watch TV now. This is.
I'm gonna make dinner soon myself.
Every day, I think it can't possibly get worse, right?
Now you know what I deal with.
I don't know. I don't know. Oh, wait. Cody has an opinion on the side part. It's not old. It's what is
Shugi?
that? What does shugi mean?
You'd have to explain that one to us, Cody. We're both old.
We don't speak young person. And she's younger than I am. What does it mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm 37, but
That makes me 20 years older.
I know.
That's scary.
Oh gosh, you know how old I feel? I'm
So-
actually having my 20-year high school reunion this year.
Yeah. 40-year reunion was last year. Didn't go. What is it? It's Ohio Chugi. What does Chugi
What
mean?
does shugi mean? Yeah, we need clarity on that.
Help me. I don't know what that means. I don't know.
We don't know what that means, Cody. You're gonna have to help us out with that one.
Chugi. I don't know. That sounds like Ohio worst times of my life. Do you know I was this close to going to Kenyon College in Ohio and
Oh,
Gambier?
really?
In Gambier, Ohio. Yeah. That was another school that I got into, and I was like really close. That was kind of like a second choice for a while. Okay, so Georgia says chugis, an American neologism coined in 2013, is a pejorative description of lifestyle trends associated with the early 2010s. This aesthetic has been described as the opposite of trendy. Okay, so chugi essentially means outdated or dated. The
Wow.
term has been used positively by some who identify with the aesthetic. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
I
That helps.
yes, I actually still own clothes from that period. Lots of clothing from that period. In fact, it's kind of embarrassing how many items of how many things I own and shoes too from that time period. So yeah, it's probably true. But I don't wear my hair that way for style. I wear it that way because that's the way it grows.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
you have socks older than me? Older than which one, Adrian or me?
Older
If
than,
you
yeah,
have
I'm
socks
hoping
older
you
than
mean
I
older
am,
than me.
oh, I see. It's a common phrase. I was gonna say, if you have socks that are almost 60 years old, you got some seriously scary socks. My socks don't make it like
How would
2
they not
years.
disintegrate after 60 years?
Yeah, they would have to. I like my socks get replaced. Socks and underwear obviously get replaced the quickest.
Oh. Hi,
Anyway, all
Piper.
right.
Are you comfortable?
Hi, Piper. So that's all we've got for you guys today. Let me put in a plug for Adrian's channel, ScioSophia on YouTube.
Yep.
Please.
And I mean, as I hinted about at the start, I'm going back and forth with Kieran about stuff on Woke Screen related to ScioSophia.
Yeah.
So that
So right now she's got a locals, but you should probably consider migrating your little butts over to the Woke Screen ecosystem. I've got The Reason We Learn over there. I've got The Reason We Parent. It's a parent support group that meets on Wednesday at noon and Sunday at 7 p.m. I basically sit there in the Discord waiting to see who shows up and wants to chat and talk about whatever's going on in their kid's school, or they want to show me stuff, curriculum, this or that. Deb, look at this. What do I do? That's what it's there for. In the Discord, if you join a collaborative membership, which is Woke Screen plus The Reason We Learn and The Reason We Parent, you can come to games night with the Woke Screen people.
God, that was fun last night.
We did that last night. We played
Colonist.
We played Colonist. Guess who won? I won. I am a colonizer oppressor, apparently. I jokingly said at the beginning.
Yeah, you won that game. That was interesting.
Yeah, I won the game, and I jokingly said at the beginning that I was probably going to win because I was both white and Jewish. So that I was a double ringer. It's a joke, guys. Everybody, it's a joke. And then so yeah, you should join Woke Screen and then keep an eye on ScioSophia because you'll probably move over there. We'll
Don't forget, if you put in your code or Deb's code, my code or Deb's code, you get 10% off your membership, and we get a lovely little kickback too. So
correct. So you're gonna want to join over there. It's right now we're just getting going, but the great thing about it is it's independent, completely independent. And so you will not be censored. You are not going to be kicked out. You're not going to be, all that. Behave yourself. Obviously, don't be like rude, but I mean, it's not a place where you get censored. And we are going to be producing more and more content behind that paywall that is worth having access to. So that is what we're talking about.
I'm just seeing the comment about the shirt. Don't forget Deb's merch. Go get Deb's merch.
That's my merch. Yes. The most important thing. It's only one of many. I've got dozens and dozens of shirts. I have more in the works. And yes, I've been given the advice, don't put the brand on the front of the shirt. So future shirts will not say The Reason We Learn, but right now they do. And I unfortunately can't go back and fix them. But there are lots of cool things over there. My personal favorite is Ally of the Individual.
Yeah.
So
that was another one I was considering getting. It was so good.
Because, everybody's like, I'm an ally of this and ally of that. It's like, well, I'm an ally of me. So, thank you, Lone Dissenter. Thank you for coming too. Lone Dissenter is kind of new to The Reason We Learn. Thank you for the super chat. And I am very grateful.
Yeah, for my stuff, Kieran and I have been going back and forth. There's lots of plans for fantastic things related to science-related stuff that's probably going to appear only on Woke Screen. And so similar kinds of things with memberships and what have you that are in the works that Kieran and I are talking about. I almost said Ian, which is not correct.
Kieran
on that one. So yeah, there's going to be lots of good stuff. And it's also going to be with my, if you are, oh gosh, if you are familiar with my channel, you know about the Rogue Journal Club podcast. And so my collaborator on that, Gina, is actually helping out with some of that stuff behind the scenes and new things that are going to be on Woke Screen only, hopefully in the near future.
This needs to be a shirt right here. I love this so much.
If you are a Jedi, if you are Jedi trained, I'm a Sith, grab send it to Kieran.
This is genius.
Brilliant.
This is absolute genius. 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 No, you should create this shirt. This is why you need to be like a Woke Screen member, because if you created this shirt,
that's right. You can create it and sell it on the Woke Screen
sell it in the Woke Screen store, and the profits are way higher than Teespring and whatever. And you can be a member over there. You can create that. You can have an affiliate thing and get more people to come to members, get paid for new members.
If you get an annual membership in Woke Screen, you can create it yourself, sell it in the merch store, and you get 100% of the profit from the merch store. Kieran doesn't take anything from it.
Yeah. So that's our advice. Make a shirt. So Fit American says, Deb, you remind me of a young, fresh, nice version of Diane Keaton. Well, I'm extremely flattered. Thank you very much. I don't know if she's nice or not nice, but thank you for saying that I am. And I've always thought that Diane Keaton was, I personally think she's very, very attractive. So thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. I know other people are like iffy, but not so much the Annie Hall days, but the like as good as it gets kind of days. Yeah. I mean, I would love to look that good when I'm that age. Yes, all the way. I just think she's fantastic. And one of my favorite movies is the one where she has 3 daughters, because I have 3 daughters. And it says, Because I Said So, that movie. I absolutely love. Now, I'm not quite as crazy as she is, but the dynamic with the daughters, I can so relate to that. Absolutely can relate to that. So I love that movie. Thank you, Lone Dissenter. Young, fresh, nice. If I'm young, then Adrian is in the womb. Fresh out the womb. All right. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Don't forget to subscribe to both channels if you're not already subscribed. Like and share the broadcast. Join all the things.
Yeah, I mean, actually, if you guys are feeling generous, I would love to get to 500 subs somewhere at some point. I'm not even there yet.
She's not there yet. So what you could do as a favor, because she's not quite at 400, but very close, is share out her channel and say that, you saw her here. She helped you understand a scientific study. There's tons of stuff over there that is such rich content about science and research studies that are being touted in the press and all these things. And she breaks it down. So that stuff is fantastic. There's a couple interviews over there that are great as well.
I'm going to be getting back to doing more interviews too.
With scientists.
It's just been hectic in my personal life.
No, well, because you're actually, employed, unlike
that too.
Me.
No, Deb, no.
It's unfair. It's unfair. I'm sure it's unfair. The process was, I don't know what the process was, but it was unfair. Actually, I know perfectly well what the process
You
was.
weren't able to show you could not handle more responsibility.
That's right. I wasn't. I tried really hard. I tried really hard to show that I was not able to handle more responsibility, but I failed. And actually, I think you're right. I've been told to my face, you're overqualified
Well, that does
many, many
happen too,
times.
unfortunately.
In 2012, when I got divorced from my first husband and I went looking for jobs and I signed up with these different sort of headhunter recruiter type of people locally. So you go physically in to see them. And I didn't have gray hair then. I looked probably like I was only, I don't know, maybe 40 at most. And I was more like late 40s. And I went in and I said, okay, I can do this and this and this. And I hadn't worked in 12 years because I was a stay-at-home mom and homeschooler. I wasn't working out. I was mom. And I go in but I had all kinds of job experience because I didn't have kids till I was 36 or 37 actually. So I go through all this and I show them all my requirements or my experiences. And they say, well, see, here's the thing. You're overqualified for most of these jobs. They're mostly admin positions. And so there's that. And if I send a white woman over 40 out on these interviews, I'm not going to make money. I mean, like they straight up to my face told me, these recruiters, that I was not going to be sent to their clients because I didn't fit the demographic that they were looking for. And I said, that's illegal. They said, well, no, it's illegal for them to consider that in hiring you. But I don't get paid if somebody doesn't get hired, so I can consider whatever variables I want. And then I said, well, that's still illegal. I'm pretty sure it's still illegal. And mind you, the girl telling me this is like 27. And I tell her this, I said, that's still illegal. She goes, prove it. And I'm like, I'm sorry? It's just like, prove it happened. Prove that I said it. And I was like, oh, but I did. Now, at first I thought, okay, this is only me. This is just this lady, me. This never happened to anyone else. A couple years ago, I meet another woman who just moved here from California, a little bit younger than I am, but not much. She went for same thing, signed up with some headhunters, interviewers, whatever. And they told her almost verbatim the same thing. And then we were talking about her trying to find a job and she said, yeah. And then I was told this thing. And I was like,
see the whole truth has the answer for you.
She says, yep, I had to tell.
Go down a little bit.
Oh, here, this says, that's when you pull up the phone and say, I just did. Well, at the time, 2012, we didn't have the smartphone capability like now to do all the things, right? Yep. But now for sure, if I ever went through a headhunter again, which I wouldn't, but if I did, you can bet your bottom dollar I'm walking in there with that voice recorder thing on in my purse for every meeting, because they absolutely do discriminate. There's no question about it. It's not, and it's more the age than the race, but it's definitely a factor. And they don't get paid unless you get hired. Mm-hmm. And right now they know what their clients are looking for, and to like ramp up their, their odds.
I never go through headhunters. I never do.
Well, it was, I didn't know where to start because I'd only lived in Charlotte at that point for like 5 years at the time. And I just didn't even know where to start. Yeah. And not having worked. So, well,
we've been running our mouths for a little bit. So
yeah. So we should probably go. Adrian's got to go eat. I've got to go eat. Thank you guys.
I'll catch the end of Crowdsource podcast. So yes, Kieran is still on. So if anybody wants to watch, go over there next.
Exactly. Thank you guys. And we'll see you next. We'll let you know when the next show is, and have a great rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.